bridge of the natural selection buzzed with activity. Technicians from the Dora workshop and station personnel moved through their checklists. Force field engineers tweaked the ship's energy matrix for the upcoming acceleration. Mechanical priests in the engine room monitored reactor output and energy indices. "Reactor ready," reported a metal-faced tech. "Engine room ready," shouted a man in a naval uniform. "Gravity field calibrated. No errors," came the clipped response of a technical priest in a red robe. A bell tolled through the cruiser's cabins. "Praise the Omnissiah, praise the gears and pistons," the tech priests intoned in unison. A tremor ran through the hull as the natural selection's aft thrusters ignited in a brilliant blue. The vessel slid slowly out of the port. "It's really sailing," someone shouted. "Awesome, class. Dora Workshop is the best. As expected of the guide's Doraemon, he can build anything." Players packed the docks, cheering and recording the moment. Humanity had not yet stepped from Holy Terra into the real stars, but in Warhammer OL, the dream was being realized. The first ship they'd built had left port. Even if it exploded in the next second, the natural selection would be a triumph. The cruiser accelerated toward Mandeville Point for the warp test. The onboard players were electric with a different kind of excitement, pride and confidence rather than spectator awe. The natural selection was only a light cruiser, inconsequential on the great battlefields between the Imperium and Chaos, but it was the first navigable ship the players had crafted themselves. "Collect all data. Report the operating status of every department," MC Myth ordered, voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. Commanding a warship, even in a game, was terrifying. This ship had been the product of months of communal labor. Any mistake could ruin his reputation. He had watched naval procedure vids and studied command protocols until he could recite them in his sleep. Engine room parameters nominal. Gravity field errors corrected. Auger deployed. Scan range increased from 300 kilometers to 200,000 kilometers. Life support stable. Temperature, humidity, and oxygen within safe limits. One by one, the reports came in. Small faults were patched, systems came online, and the pressure in Myth's chest eased. Relief turned to a quick, contagious ambition. "The success of the natural selection means we can now build starships at industrial scale," MC Myth said, suddenly grand. "Modular design, automated assembly lines, these ideas are right. We will forge a fleet that darkens the heavens and crushes our enemies." He paused, letting the moment hang, then shifted tone. "But we must not squander this. There is a greater disgrace in the galaxy, the lack of wonders. That is an insult to us. Players of Stellaris, MC players, Civilization players, the Wonder Dynasty has been humiliated." Faces on the bridge flushed with zeal. "We cannot tolerate this," Myth thundered. "From this day forth, no games, no distractions, no love affairs. No chasing honor, no rankings. We pledge ourselves to the Corpse Emperor, here and now. We are the Corpse Emperor's artisans, creators of wonders. We are the Great Wall against ignorance, wielders of megastructure technology. We dedicate our lives and passions to the Corpse Emperor, to wonders, this day and every day." The players answered like a chorus, voices rising until the bridge vibrated. "What do we do?" Myth called. "Build wonders," they roared. "Build wonders. Build wonders." The vow tightened their resolve. They would grind, design, and invent until the galaxy could not ignore them. A day and a night later, the natural selection reached Mandeville Point. Players logged in and out as they pleased, but the ship ran with trained crew and automated watch. Adjuncts stepped into vacated posts when a god-chosen disconnected. The forums brimmed with envy. Damn it, they already launched the ship? When will the 9th batch of test slots open? The ship prepared to enter the warp. Activating Jeller Field. Lowering bulkheads, Myth ordered. Psychers, conscripted as psychic batteries, wrenched in their sleep as the field came online. The Jeller Field used their dreams as anchors rooted in Holy Terra to block the warp's incursions, safeguarding the sailors and preventing psychic bleed. The players had engineered a rotation system for the psychic batteries, so each psyker bore the strain only for a limited period. The worst they'd likely feel would be a pounding headache at the end of the run rather than being drained raw. Shielding engaged. The warp engine pierced the veil. The natural selection dove through a rift, and minutes later emerged in real space 12 light-years from the Atoma planet. Success. Warp transit complete, the crew reported. Jubilation swept the bridge. They ran weapons diagnostics, all green, then set course back to Likert Space Station. The ship slipped once more into port to the roar of waiting players. At Dora Workshop, Dora and the rest celebrated. With testing complete, the natural selection was ready for mass production. "Let's set a modest first goal, 10,000 ships," Dora proclaimed. "Are you insane?" Grey Wolf blinked. 10,000 light cruisers? Do you know how much that would cost to maintain? "We won't keep them in service ourselves," Dora waved away the objection. "We produce to sell. Think of it as supply for the market, not a fleet to hold. Then fund other players with contribution points and hire them to operate the ships in the field. No upkeep for us, more machines on the line." Grey Wolf's suggestion sank in. "Fine. 10,000, Dora decided, voice hard. "Ramp production. Let this universe remember the terror of the fourth catastrophe." Far from the workshops and ports, a different sort of violence raged. Watch Star, the Hax family's refuge, smoldered under siege. After the Collin family's betrayal and the fall of the Scintilla Hive world, Sector Lord Marius Hax had retreated here with his kin and remaining forces. He had tried to rally loyalists against the rebel Collin family, but the traitors, backed by chaos sorcery, had pushed victory after victory. The rebels tried to break morale by killing Marius Hax. They dragged him from his palace like a beaten cur and brought him before Urs Collin, the campaign's architect. Urs, a naval mastermind in a gold-trimmed uniform, looked down on the disheveled Sector Lord with a sneer. Chaos sorcerers stood behind him, eyes cold and alien. The Collin family no longer hid its collusion with chaos. They had used those eldritch powers to win battles. "Traitor to the Corpse Emperor," Marius spat, voice ragged. Urs laughed. "Traitor? To the Corpse Emperor? The age of the Imperium is finished. The Great Raider has breached the Eye of Terror. The Great Rift rends the galaxy. The gods are rising." "You delude yourself," Marius rasped, coughing blood. "The living saint has descended on Atoma. The Imperium will prevail." Urs curled his lip. "How many fleets does this living saint have? Can one saint tip the balance against us? Once we finish off the Corpse Emperor's pawns, the Valanxius line will be laid bare for the taking. Your saint changes nothing." A soldier burst in, out of breath. "General, word from the prisoners. The governor's wife and children were taken off-world long ago." Urs's expression flickered. He laughed again, cruel and hollow. "Our governor loved his family. He used himself as bait to buy them time. It's a pity. None will escape. Blockade the orbit. Let no ship leave. We want the Hax family reunited." But the blockade was too slow. A few cargo ships slipped through. The news reached the rebel command amid scoffs. "It seems your wish won't be granted, traitor." A brief, ragged sound escaped Marius's throat. "My children will live. They will return with the Imperium's fleets and have their vengeance." Urs's face hardened. Annoyed at the escaped vessels and the thought of future retribution, he picked up a heavy warhammer from a subordinate. He swung it down on Marius Hax's skull, again and again. At first, Marius screamed. After a few blows, he went silent. When Urs finally stopped, the former Sector Lord lay a ruined corpse, his head smashed, blood and brains staining the aquila on his uniform. The rebels did not speak. The echo of the warhammer was the only sound for a long moment. 102. New expansion, the Emperor's Wrath. Wandering Port was a vast void port, more a giant hive city suspended in the black than a mere station. With a permanent population in the tens of millions, it sat on the Drusus marches of the Calixis sector, the last human-controlled stop before the Coronis expanse. Founded by the Imperial Navy in 917 M40 as a rallying point to investigate the disappearance of warships around the Drusus marches, it later grew into a transshipment hub after a rogue trader discovered a passage into the Coronis expanse nearby. Adventurers, fortune-seekers, and merchants poured in. Relics and artifacts from the expanse sat beside standard-issue arms from various Forge worlds. The resident population was a motley crowd, pirates preying on trade, Inquisition agents, family syndicates running gray businesses, fanatical preachers. The port prospered quickly and became a prize coveted by many factions. Formerly under Imperial Navy jurisdiction, Wandering Port was managed day-to-day by several powerful families who collected fees and provided local governance while the Navy performed periodic patrols. Those families grew into major powers. Then came betrayal. When the Colin family turned, the other great houses defected and opened Wandering Port to the rebels. The rebel fleet, aided by inside cooperation, seized the port with horrifying ease. Imperial vessels were cut down in orbit, fields of wreckage and bodies strewn across the void. "Why? Where is your loyalty to the Emperor?" cried Fenrir, a naval vice admiral holed up in the port's headquarters, addressing the family representatives who had come to seize him and claim favor with the rebels. Had the garrison held, they could have endured for years. With Wandering Port's firepower and reserves, they would have made the rebel fleet pay dearly. But the major houses chose treachery and led the rebels in. "The Emperor's age is over. The gods are coming," the representative of the Hare family sneered. "Cadia has fallen, the Eye of Terror expands, the galaxy is tearing apart, Holy Terra is too busy to care, even the Astronomican's light falters. Surrender, Vice Admiral Fenrir. Everything you stand for is meaningless." The spokesperson from the Fetus family urged him to yield. Fenrir roared in answer. "Even if I die 1,000 times, I will never betray the Emperor. Traitors, you will pay for this." "Foolish," the Hare man replied coldly. "Then go die." The headquarters was overrun. Loyal Imperial sailors were slaughtered. Fenrir fought to the end and fell. His body was desecrated and hung as a display in the ruined command hall. After the rebels took control, looting and massacre spread through the hive. Countless citizens were enslaved, sent to factories, or conscripted into producing materiel for the rebellion. Wandering Port was only one corner of a wider uprising across the Calixis sector. The same scenes played out at Landing Port, the industrial world of Finks, the agricultural world of Icons, and many others. Betrayal was everywhere. Worlds swore fealty to the Colin family and abandoned the Imperium. Loyalist forces were driven to the brink, scattered, isolated, and waiting to be encircled and destroyed. The Colin family needed only patience. The Loyalists would be annihilated. Despair settled over every servant of the Emperor. After a week-long warp voyage, the fleet led by the Imperial Glory tore through a raging warp storm and returned to the Atoma region of the Calixis sector. The fleet reopened real space at Mandeville Point. The Imperial Glory emerged first, followed by many other warships. Word of their arrival spread fast. Atoma's defense systems activated, and provisional squadrons, escaped Imperial Navy vessels, turned to take up defensive positions. For a moment, many feared the incoming force might be rebel. The confusion cleared when it became known the Imperial Glory had come back. Joy swept through the populace. Senior officials like Fung and Heidelake boarded transports and fighters bound for Leicard Space Station to welcome the guide, and some fleeing dignitaries followed. Once inside real space, Qin Yun left overall fleet command to Xia and retired to the Imperial Glory's strategic room to review the intelligence Shieling had compiled. It was miserable reading. The players in Atoma were developing well, thanks in part to the Adeptus Mechanicus, who had helped build space smelters, orbital factories, mines, and other infrastructure to exploit void resources. Void cities and orbital farms had been established to house refugees and secure food supplies. The Dora workshop had completed the maiden voyage of a light cruiser, closing a shipbuilding chain that now needed only scale to churn out warships. Nearly 3,000 Astartes had finished their implantation surgeries and were now training under Captain Sotha. Atoma's standing army had swelled to 20 million, 5 million of them in exoskeleton armor and armed with Gauss weaponry. Their combat power had multiplied. Still, the Calixis sector was a ruin. Imperial loyalists had been routed and were scattered. Unless rescued, they faced methodical encirclement by the rebels. "The situation's come to this?" Qin Yun muttered. Beside him, the projection of Shieling flickered into being. "Master, Fung and Heidelake have sent word. They are waiting for you at Leicard Space Station's B-145 berth," Shieling reported. Accompanying them are Inquisitor Kaiden, Marshal Gorman of the Sector Judiciary, Cardinal Ignatius, and other senior representatives. Qin Yun's expression darkened. These were the sector's key figures. Why had they come to Atoma instead of staying to fight? "Did Feng say what they want?" he asked. "They came to seek the Emperor's living saint, to unite all loyalist forces against the rebels," Shieling answered. Qin Yun's head ached, so even now the loyalists bickered. He had hoped matters could not worsen. He had been mistaken. He rubbed his temples and made a decision. Sealing, prepare a new expansion pack. Call it Wrath of the Emperor. The Calixis situation could not be put off. Atoma had already built significant war potential. Qin Yun intended to use it as a base to strike outward, reopen loyalist fronts, and rally the sector. The campaign would also be an opportunity to launch the first expansion for the new Warhammer Online update and galvanize the players. Understood, Master, Shieling said, already beginning work. The Imperial Glory glided into port to the roar of fireworks across the Hive cities. Crowds cheered, shouting the guide's name and offering the Aquila salute as the ship descended. Qin Yun's story had spread among the refugees and grown with every retelling. He had become a savior in their eyes. If the guide returns to strike, everything will be made right, they said, and they believed it. When Qin Yun stepped forward, their devotion peaked. Rumors circulated of pure white wings and a golden radiance that healed the soul with a casual wave of the hand, traits that marked him as a living saint in their minds. Some fell to their knees, weeping, begging him to save their homeworlds. In the name of the Emperor, I will go and save every world plunged into despair, Qin Yun told them. When some began to worship him as a deity, he pushed back. There are no gods in this galaxy, but the god Emperor, he said. He is higher than any god. I am only an ordinary man blessed by him. His companions listened in amusement as the players bantered over the crowd's reaction. He says he's not a god? Shi Tilang complained over comms. Why put on such a display? I want to pray to win the lottery tomorrow. You don't get it, Ningba Ren replied. Faith steadies people's hearts. These folks have been terrorized by the rebels. If you don't give them something shocking to restore confidence, they won't hold. If it keeps going like this, the guide will be worshipped as a second emperor, War Master interjected. Old Bird chuckled. Between this is part of the plan, I am not a god, and I am Rogal Dorn, the galaxy may soon hear I am only an ordinary man blessed by the Emperor. Qin Yun felt a little helpless at their complaints. He did not relish the spectacle, but it was the fastest way to rally the refugees and make them serve. There was no time for slow measures. Escorted by soldiers, he passed through the cheering throng and reached the waiting dignitaries. Trumpets blared, cherubim and servitor skulls circled overhead, broadcasting the arrival of the saint. 103. The first major battle, the Empire's Redeemer, the civilization's guide, the Emperor's saint, and humanity's savior have arrived. Rejoice, servants of the God Emperor. Qin Yun's string of titles was read out for nearly a minute. From the moment they saw him, the dignitaries bowed, only daring to straighten their backs once his name had been fully recited. Before anyone could ask a question, Qin Yun spoke. The Lord of Ultramar, the great son of the Emperor, the regent of the Empire, the supreme lord of the Terra Senate, Robut Gilliman, has been resurrected on Macragge and is currently leading Imperial forces to drive the traitors from Ultramar. He will soon journey to Terra on pilgrimage. This is the authorization document personally signed by him. Across the Calixis sector, the Coronis Expanse, and any areas I can influence and save, all human armies and government departments must unconditionally obey my commands. Qin Yun produced the document, handed it to an attendant, and had it passed through the assembled group. Murmurs of astonishment rose. A Primarch had returned? Is this true? One man asked eagerly. Qin Yun's gaze cut through him like a blade. He nodded once. It is true. A servo skull then broadcast footage of the Macragge ceremony. Gilliman's imposing figure and the massive army on the screen confirmed Qin Yun's words. Hope spread through the hall. A Primarch has returned. Those traitors are doomed. Some voices were more cautious. You're thinking too big. The galaxy is in chaos. Even if a Primarch has returned, he will prioritize key regions. The Calixis sector can't compete with places like the solar segmentum. Yes, we still have to save ourselves. Qin Yun quieted the room. I know many of you are uncertain about me. Some of you question my loyalty and plot power plays right under my nose. I have neither the time nor the patience for that. Now, you have a choice. Relinquish your authority and leave. I'll not pursue you. If you choose to stay, you must obey my orders absolutely. If you intend to challenge my authority, go ahead. Whether you serve the Inquisition or the State Church, I will crush anyone who stands in my way. We declare war on the rebels. You have 1 day to organize everything you know and report it to me at the next meeting. Dismissed. One day from now, we will convene a military council to finalize the battle plans, and then we will declare war on the rebels. Qin Yun's exchange with the dignitaries lasted only half an hour. He showed no patience or mercy, simply demanded they submit. He felt no regret. The situation had been allowed to degenerate under their watch, and not ordering their immediate arrest was already mercy. After a brief public address, he left. Back in his quarters, Shilling reported that the data pack had been edited. "Send it for review," Qin Yun said. "Understood, Master." A projection flared to life before him. Data pack, Emperor's Wrath, official launch synopsis. Chaos has spread through the Calixis sector. The Colin family, in league with Chaos forces, threatens Imperial citizens. Countless worlds have been razed and countless innocents massacred. The enemies of the Empire have provoked the Emperor's wrath. It is time to punish them. Instructions. 1. All warbands must register with NPCs Ainge and Losa before the deadline. Official teams will assign missions based on each warband's characteristics. 2. Points earned during the campaign determine players' rewards during settlement. The merit system will activate after the data pack concludes. 3. Farming players who complete military orders or assist in building military structures will receive points, contribution points, and Aquila coins. 4. Warbands may recruit auxiliary troops. Players can enlist NPC soldiers to assist in combat, but must supply standard combat equipment. 5. When accepting missions, warbands should assess whether they can complete them. War missions have time limits. Missing a deadline counts as failure and will deduct war points. 6. Thought for the day. In the Emperor's name, bring judgment upon those shameful traitors. Qin Yun reviewed the file. Satisfied, he had Shilling upload it to the official site and pin it. 1 second, the forum thread was full of speculation about Macragge. The next, it exploded over the new data pack. 10,000 spawns of Slanesh. Is this the first big campaign? After building our warbands for so long, finally a place to shine. My great axe is thirsty. Kill, kill, kill. Chop, chop, chop. Second Empire Warmaster. Warriors of the Emperor's cannon fodder. Assemble for the Emperor. Wearing sunglasses. Hammer and Sickle Battle Group. Assemble. The Divine Engine marches. Incinerate the galaxy. Wearing helmet. Blood Pigeon. Ace pilots. Log in. Time to show off our training. Lobster Soup Roar. Duty bound. 13th Regiment. Charge. Qin Yun smiled as he read the replies. The players' morale was high. This would be their first time fighting as a unified force. He couldn't let them down. Enthusiasm isn't enough, he muttered. We need to allow players to benefit from the game. Most players were online out of excitement, and the mechanic that linked game time to sleep helped. But large-scale warfare might demand continuous online time for days. Letting players earn income, turning some into professional players, was necessary. That income had to be carefully controlled so a few could play full-time without destabilizing society. He made a mental note to address that when time allowed. The military council convened in a huge warehouse on Likard Space Station. So many officials and high-level players attended that a regular conference hall wouldn't suffice. The ventilation systems ran at full bore to strip carbon dioxide from the crowd and pump in fresh air. A temporary projection displayed a star map of the Calixis sector. Most systems were colored red, indicating rebel control. A few blue zones still held out, but they were teetering. After several senior officers detailed the situation, Qin Yun stepped forward. You all know the state of the Calixis sector, he said. We must declare war on the rebels and liberate the suffering worlds. To maximize our chances and beat these traitors, any family that has lost its governed territory will no longer be qualified to rule it. Those territories will be reassigned to more capable hands. Players in the crowd lit up. Looks like groundwork for the merit system, someone murmured. Heh, planetary governor, here I come. Even if it's just in the game, being a planetary governor is awesome. Some representatives of the displaced ruling families grew visibly uncomfortable. They had not resisted in order to preserve their remaining power and voices. If Qin Yun's pronouncement held, they would lose all rights to rule. The murmur of dissent swelled. Qin Yun continued. The political structure of the Calixis sector will be reorganized. In Guillemin's name, I am authorized to carry this out. All official positions will be adjusted to fit the new structure. From now on, only ability and loyalty matter. No backroom political deals under my command. If anyone crosses that line, I won't hesitate to tie them to the prow of a warship." The room erupted into audible protests. "Sir, are you attempting to overthrow Terra's government? Our family is recognized by the Terra Senate. You have no right to dismiss us." "This is too radical. Our family is loyal. You cannot strip us of our rights with a single decree." Qin Yun let them vent, then spoke. "Are you opposing the Emperor's will? You lost the Calixis sector. What right have you to continue ruling? Power comes with responsibility. You failed spectacularly, and yet you dare to haggle." His voice carried and pinned them silent. Heads lowered. "Everything announced today will be implemented. We must unite to defeat the enemy. Tomorrow, we begin war mobilization. All units and departments will make way for the war. The traitors think we are helpless. We will show them how wrong they are." The next day, the war mobilization orders were issued sector-wide. Military commands surged like a tide. Factories converted to munitions production, machines ran around the clock, and troops assembled, swore the oaths, and boarded warships. Players' enthusiasm translated into organized force as they prepared for their first large-scale engagement. Qin Yun did not delay. He issued the declaration of war and named their first objective, Scintilla. As the capital world of the Calixis sector, retaking Scintilla would carry enormous symbolic weight and give loyalists everywhere a much-needed morale boost. Author's note: thank you to all my readers for your encouragement. Your support is my greatest motivation. My writing isn't perfect, so I focus on keeping updates frequent to satisfy everyone. I hope you continue to enjoy and subscribe. I still owe you 2 chapters. 104. Aren't players meant to be exploited? After the grand oath-taking, Qin Yun ordered the fleet to depart. 200 vessels made up the armada. Alongside Imperial Navy warships, a number of civilian cargo barges had been pressed into service to carry soldiers and supplies. Every factory and void port on Atoma had been cleared. Mountains of material and battalions of troops were loaded aboard. The fleet set course for Mandeville Point and dove into the warp. The storms of Tsinch thrashed harder the further they went. Warp currents that could tear a ship apart if navigated carelessly. Yet under Qin Yun's guidance, the armada cut through the chaos as if the tempests did not exist. Kaiden of the Inquisition watched closely. Since the Eye of Terror expanded, warp travel had become a gamble. Ships could be flung into madness, voids could open beneath them, and psychic phenomena could drive crews to mass suicide or lunacy. But none of that manifested under Qin Yun's protection. The fleet made a passage that normally took days in a matter of hours. Folk aboard whispered that the guide somehow negated the storms. Faith in Qin Yun swelled. "Praise the God Emperor. He has sent his messenger," Cardinal Ignatius intoned, kneeling in private prayer. Marshal Gorman of the Administratum nodded solemnly. Praise rose and fell like the tide, but Qin Yun had no time to bask in it. Nearing Scintilla, a great, awe-inspiring bell pealed through the comms. All hands prepare for real space jump. The Celestial Lord's voice carried across the fleet. All ships confirm readiness for synchronized entry. All ships confirmed. Ready for synchronized entry into real space, a fleet liaison reported. Qin Yun stood on the highest tier of the bridge, eyes on the armored blast shields that hid the whirling souls beyond. Xia approached. "Sir, shall we jump to real space now?" Qin Yun's reply came after a pause. "All ship communication." Understood. A small device, shaped like a pair of angels, hovered down on anti-grav turbines. A mechanical arm brought a speaker to Qin Yun's mouth. He gathered his thoughts and spoke with calm authority. "Comrades," he began, "I am honored to fight beside you. Your courage inspires me. The Divine Emperor has shown us his will through the return of his son, Robout Guilliman. He will not yield to the ancient enemies. He grants us glory so that we may shape the future and ensure the eternal survival of human civilization. Those dark traitors who bow to false gods and would force us to kneel, such things cannot be tolerated. They will pay for their treachery. There will be no compromise, no negotiation, no retreat, and no mercy. We will purge these enemies. Many among you may lay down your lives. Fear not, the Emperor awaits all who are loyal." Qin Yun's voice rose, resonant and commanding. "We will take this victory. We will reclaim Scintilla. The enemy will be crushed beneath our assault, crying for mercy, and the double-headed eagle shall fly over every world once more. Fight in the Emperor's name. Tear the enemy apart in the Emperor's name. Win this victory in the Emperor's name. The speech hit like a flame. Battle lust spread through the fleet. Memories of razed homes and slaughtered kin hardened into a simple resolve, blood for blood. Shixilang couldn't help an impressed exhale. Old Bird thought to himself that Qin Yun's oratory even outshone the War Masters. After a few minutes of rallying, Qin Yun issued combat orders: set reactors to maximum, charge all lance arrays, load macro cannons, bring all missiles and torpedoes to launch ready, activate conventional engines. He paused, measured. In the Emperor's name, let the void burn. The fleet dropped from the warp into real space. Jeller fields shut down and were replaced by void shields. Conventional drives came alive, propelling the warships towards Scintilla. On the bridge, the players of the Emperor Numa battle group pressed against the viewports, watching the black ocean of space and the tiny pinpricks of enemy drives leading them. "The battle's about to start," Shixilang said. "Are we just going to watch like before? What can we do?" Ningba sighed. "We don't have warships." "You're being dense. If we don't have warships, can't we take some?" Shixilang shot back. Ningba blinked. "Take them? Take whose? And that's against regulations. What if the guide punishes us?" "Don't be an idiot," Haigui said quietly. His promotion to Astartes hadn't dulled his drive to expand his senses. From far off, he could make out the faint, clustered glow of enemy engine exhaust, confirmation that the rebels had already detected the fleet. "They've seen us." Wristbro, excited, clapped. "If we seize enemy ships, it's proper warcraft. Warhammer without boarding actions isn't Warhammer." "Gilliman supplied the guide with boarding torpedoes when we left Macragge," Juge added. "This could work." Eyes turned to the War Master. The whole lot of them nudged him with expectant grins. "Why are you all looking at me?" he protested, uneasy. "You're the guide's champion, nominally the chapter master," Shixilang said. "If you don't go, who will?" "I'm the number one, so I should go," the War Master protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're the boss. If the boss doesn't show up, do you expect us little brothers to?" Juge teased. Under good-natured coercion and the irresistible pull of glory, the War Master trudged to the bridge to request permission from Qin Yun. "You want to attempt boarding and seizing enemy ships during the void engagement?" Qin Yun asked. The War Master was nervous, his first time asking for a mission. "Yes." Qin Yun considered it. Players were not regular soldiers. They were entities called forth by the Emperor. For them, death was merely a return. Binding them to rigid peacetime rules would be a waste. If they were given choices, they would find their own paths to fight. He nodded. "Granted," he said. The War Master cheered and dashed back to the chapter to spread the word. Qin Yun called for Sealing's projection. "Evaluate the cost of all transports and gunboats, label them, and require a deposit when the god chosen take one. If the mission succeeds, return the deposit. If the mission fails and the vessel is damaged, withhold it. Also, grant them special credit so contribution points don't block participation." Qin Yun watched the projection finish the orders. Players liked freedom, but they also liked recklessness. Some guardrails would prevent wanton waste of fleet assets. Xia's eyes went wide. Equipment would now have to be bought, and if the god chosen lacked funds, they'd be forced to take loans. Assault boats for boarding would require deposits, fail, and they'd owe the Imperium. It was harsh, but Qin Yun argued it was necessary. "What kind of players aren't exploited?" he muttered. "If you don't give them obstacles, where's the joy in overcoming them?" Meanwhile, in low orbit above Scintilla, a vast void port teemed with loot and prisoners. Dao Ba, the pirate chieftain, infamous across the Calixis sector for the intersecting scars that marked his face, grinned as crates and shackled slaves were funneled aboard. Dao Ba had preyed on the sector's main lanes for years. Once he'd been hunted by the Imperial Navy, but always slipped away thanks to inside help. When the Collin family turned traitor, they promised him free reign over any loyalist worlds they took. He'd eagerly signed. "We're something else now," one of his pirates crowed, cracking a whip. "Never thought we'd get to loot Scintilla." "Those bastards used to hunt us," another said. "Now it's their turn to suffer." Dao Ba's smug face brightened at the thought, until a calm crackled. Boss, sensors pick up multiple engine signatures rapidly approaching. By the Emperor's grandmother's leg, Daoba muttered. Who else is coming for a piece of the pie? He dismissed the loyalists. They'd been routed, he believed. If anyone could change the balance, it would be the Imperial Navy from another sector. But the Navy was stretched thin across the galaxy. More likely, some other faction sought plunder. He ordered the loading to hurry. Once it's on our ships, it's ours, he barked. 10 minutes later, a terrified voice cut through the comms. They've opened fire! Those aren't ours, loyalists. Loyalists. Daoba's smugness dropped away. Loyalists? They weren't supposed to be here. A void battle erupted in the orbit of Scintilla. When the rebels first detected an unfamiliar fleet approaching, they assumed it had come to share the spoils. The Imperial Navy in the Calixis sector had already collapsed. There was no hope of organized counterattack. All that mattered now, in their eyes, was plundering wealth and population, turning wartime chaos into profit. The Emperor's glory had vanished in this sector, and the Empire's rule seemed on the brink of becoming history. Still, the old law held. The biggest fist had the final say. Their complacency ended when patrolling warning ships were cut down. The newcomers were loyalists. The rebels scrambled to mount a defense before the Imperial fleet closed into orbit. To protect his soldiers and supplies, Qin Yun kept the cargo barges clear of the fighting, leaving them outside the battlefield until the void battle ended. The Imperial glory led the main warships, and soon the two forces collided in a storm of light and metal. Energy beams crisscrossed, void shields rippled under impact, and the roar of artillery filled the void. Missile contrails sketched doom across the black. The Imperial glory was like a blade, cutting into the enemy formation, while hull-mounted batteries spat a relentless storm of fire. Flashes and explosions followed in rapid succession. In the name of the Omnissiah, attack! Attack! Blood Pigeon shouted to rally his squad. Ace pilots, today's our chance to make a name. Destroy the enemy completely, another voice called. Don't ask if you live to return. Ask how many you kill. Die on the battlefield, spill your blood in the void, all for the Omnissiah. On the flight deck, everything was frantic. Tech priests and shipwrights ran final checks on howling Fury interceptors. Engines flared in rhythmic pulses, bathing the wide deck in cold light. Hatches slammed, safety pins came off warheads, fuel lines were disconnected, and then the catapults spat the fighters out like hunting birds. The void filled with beams, shells, missiles, and torpedoes. Slaughter lit up everywhere. Blood Pigeon led a flight escorting 2 Starhawk bombers. Fury interceptors were fleet void attack craft, used to intercept missiles, torpedoes, and bombers, while Starhawks carried plasma charges and armor-piercing missiles capable of damaging cruisers. Blood Pigeon was linked to his fighter's neural net, receiving every sensor readout directly. He smiled when a small ship slipped into weapon range. Hunting time, he said. 5 fighters slashed through the void like falcons. At 70 meters long, they were tiny against the battle, but their stealth coatings ate sensor signatures and let them move like ghosts. Their target was a converted armed freighter, too small to have a warp engine, usable only for local trade and raids. Its sensors were sluggish. It only detected the interceptors at point-blank range. It spat a burst of fire, but the interceptors slipped through it. Fire, Blood Pigeon ordered. Let them taste death. 10 plasma missiles streaked from the fighters. The freighter tried to evade, but it was too late. The salvo struck its midsection. The hull erupted. Seconds later, the damaged reactor mushroomed, leaving a cloud of wreckage and a score for the attackers. Kill +1, read the fighter's kill feed. Blood Pigeon grinned at the scoreboard and threaded the formation through the debris. He even had time to jab a message into the area channel. Looks like the MVP of the Scintilla campaign is us. Xiaopeng, shameless! You're taking advantage of us not being able to fight in the void. September 9th. Your lead won't last. Once the ground war starts, we'll make up the points fast. Blood Pigeon. I hope so. I hope there's enough ground for everyone. There'll be orbital bombardment first, then fighter sweeps to clear the rabble before you get a turn. Maybe you'll find scraps in the ruins we leave behind, so your trip won't be wasted. The banter on the channel only heightened the tension aboard the Emperor Numa battle group. Orbital bombardment, followed by fighter sweeps. How many war points would the surviving traders manage when they had to share with Xiao Pang's mech squad? Mechs outgunned them. In pure killing efficiency, the Astartes couldn't keep up. "We have to board and turn the tide," Warmaster grumbled, echoing the feeling of his kin. But they were too far out. He watched an enemy ship 1,000 kilometers away and felt the problem. A rushed boarding run would be suicide. The men sighed. There was no easy opportunity. On the bridge, Qin Yun watched the battlefield with steady calm. Most of the enemy ships were converted merchant vessels or pirate-flagged freighters. True capital ships were scarce. Overall, he had the advantage. "That battleship should be ours," he observed, nodding at the exemplar St. Fist engaged with the Imperial Glory. He turned to Shieling. "Create a mission. Have the players find a way to capture that exemplar St. Fist battlecruiser." "Master, understood," Shieling replied. "Sealing will prepare it immediately." As the Emperor Numa battle group debated the wisdom of becoming Astartes, a mission bulletin flashed through their systems. Mission: board and capture the exemplar St. Fist battlecruiser. The exemplar St. Fist is a valuable asset of the Emperor's servants. These traitors stole it to harm the Emperor's people. Reclaim it. Basic reward: 4,000 contribution points, 50,000 honor points, 70,000 war points. Commission reward: additional rewards vary based on the captured warship. Hint: only warbands may accept this mission. The Atoma Internal Affairs Department guarantees funding for the purchase of boarding craft and weapons. Complete the mission diligently. If successful, players will receive full reward and all losses will be covered by the Empire. If the mission fails, players must repay the guaranteed funds. 4 million contribution points, 50,000 honor points, 70,000 war points. Warmaster practically whooped. Accept. He took the mission immediately. "There's a note. Complete it, and the Empire covers our losses. Fail, and we repay," Haigui added, reading the hint. "That's massive. If we do this, they reimburse everything." Shichi Lang was ecstatic. "So we board without any cost? Blood Pigeon and the pilots pay for their fighters, but we don't pay for anything." "The authorities are actually offering good terms," Ningba Ren said, surprised and eager. "Let's use it. We'll get to the flight deck. As soon as the Imperial Glory disables that battleship's shields, we board." They rushed to the hangar and loaded into Kestros assault boats, also called Gauntlet assault boats, the standard boarding craft of the God Emperor's chosen. Fast, heavily armored, and bristling with minimal but brutal weaponry, each carried a front-mounted melt-a-gun to cut a hole through hulls. They waited, hearts pounding. Qin Yun heard their chatter through Shiling's channels. "Xia," he said, pointing at the blip that marked the exemplar St. Fist on the star chart. "Close in on that warship, find a way to disable its shields, and open a boardable gap for the God chosen." "Understood," Xia answered. When the Imperial Glory and the exemplar St. Fist passed, broadside macro cannons thundered. A devastating volley struck the battlecruiser, and its shields faltered. The boarding boats, having waited for that exact moment, screamed out of the carrier and toward the wounded hull. Enemy point defense batteries and escort fighters lunged to intercept. Blood Pigeon and his interceptors cut through enemy fighters to provide cover. One assault boat took a direct hit in the void. An expletive crackled over the comms and then static. The boat carrying Haigui and Ningba Ren was vaporized in a single brilliant explosion, gone before they reached the hull. 2 more boats followed, torn apart before they could latch on. The assault was costly. The remaining boats, however, fought on. They raked through fighter fire and slammed into the enemy hull, magnetic clamps locking them in place. Melta beams flared and burned a hole large enough for an Astartes to pass. "Finally inside! Let's avenge our brothers!" Warmaster shouted, weapon in hand, his voice raw with excitement. "Kill! Kill! Kill! Hack! Hack! Hack!" others answered. "Rampage! Feel the wrath of the God Emperor, you fools! Your doomsday has arrived!" Those players who made it aboard poured through the breach like hungry wolves, catching the surprised defenders off guard. The boarders fell upon them with the merciless fervor of the Emperor's chosen. 106. Killing spree. The players poured into the exemplar St. Fist's central corridors and unleashed chaos. They had breached the warship and now moved like a storm, cutting down any enemy in sight. The defenders stood no chance. Caught in an overwhelming offensive, they were nothing but targets. Surrender. I choose to surrender. Spare me. I know I was wrong. Some tried to kneel and beg. Ristbro answered them with a single roar and a swing of his chain axe. Traitors to the Emperor, die. No mercy, no forgiveness, only death. He cleaved them where they knelt. Then the squad pushed deeper into the ship. The defenders scrambled, rallying more armed crew to clear the intruders. Battles broke out all along the corridors. For the Horde, for the Queen, for the Midnight Phantoms, for Demacia. The players shouted slogans as they charged. Wherever they went, there was blood, and the decks were soon carpeted with shattered bodies. Tu-Pai moved like a shadow. His weapons were a pair of power claws humming with a crackling field, razor sharp, able to slice through armor and flesh alike. He slipped between gunshots in line of sight. Soldiers barely saw him before he was upon them. Then he struck, fast, silent, utterly lethal. A rebel squad sent to clear the board walked into his ambush and was slaughtered before it could react. A soldier fumbled for his gun. Tu-Pai materialized at his side. Terror froze the man's face, then a hot pain in the gut. Sharp claws pierced his abdomen, and Tu-Pai whispered, "Sinners who betray the Emperor shall go to hell." With a horizontal sweep, he disemboweled the man. As another soldier fired, his torso exploded under a bolter round. Tui turned to see Zhuge, bolter in hand, casually blowing the muzzle smoke aside. "My child, there's no need to thank your father for saving your life. These are things your father should do. Wait here while your father goes to kill a few people." Tu-Pai felt a flicker of gratitude, then flipped him off. Zhuge chuckled and went back to firing. A mournful scream rose from a residential block. "No!" Passers-by paused, puzzled. How many wives had the screamer lost to emit such a raw keening? Jichirui sat on his bunk, face hollow with despair. Fate had been cruel. His assault boat had been shredded by the ship's point defense. 2 squads, 10 players, had been blown apart with it. The game felt merciless. Oh right, faith points. They speed resurrection. He snatched his helmet and jammed it on. A prompt blinked in his view. Can use faith points to speed resurrection after 1 hour. The last tiny spark of hope died. An hour. By then, the boarding action would be finished. He was out of luck. He opened his comms and scrolled through the chat. Guilliman is the only son. Brothers, I bought a secret luck manual from an old man on the street. Dora is the lord of myriad machines. Do you have to chant the blessed Xuanhuang immortal venerable version? Guilliman is the only son. Do you think I haven't read web novels? Wolf who plays with Red Riding Hood. Is it one of those rituals that needs 9 sacrifices, 9 blessings, 9 praises? Guilliman is the only son. Ningba Ren uses Ningba hammer. Fate is so cruel to me. Ningba Ren, weren't you at Scintilla? How are you chatting? Please drink turtle soup. Don't mention it. We got hit by point defense. 2 squads wiped before they could draw blades. Ningba Ren uses Ningba hammer. We really need to change our luck. Guilliman is the only son. Try mine? No thanks. I'll buy the Lord of Myriad Machines prayers. My heart only has the Emperor, unlike you who's irreverent. Guilliman is the only son. I just realized, could my ID be why I never get an internal test slot? Back inside the exemplar Saint Fist. Lower the bulkheads, now. Trap them. Don't let them through. These players are terrifying. We can't match them. Crewmen slammed blast doors into place, sealing off passages to slow the invaders. Those who hadn't made it inside pounded on the sealed doors, begging comrades to let them in. The men behind the doors ignored them, letting them be butchered by the players rather than risk opening up and losing more ground. They're clever, closing doors because they can't win in open fight, War Master observed. He pulled a greatsword from a corpse, then activated a holo on his vambrace, showing the ship's internal layout. This is the exemplar Saint Fist, he said as the hologram hovered. Our objective is the bridge. Capture it, and we take the ship. Also critical, the main reactor and the ammo depot. We must secure those first, so they can't blow the ship and take us with it. Split into 3 squads, 1 to the power core, 1 to the ammo depot, and 1 to the bridge. 4 points glowed on the map. Current location, reactor, ammo depot, bridge. Shi Lang, take a squad to the reactor. 2P, you take a squad to the ammo depot. I'm sending map data. Confirm receipt. War Master closed the holo and pushed the nav packets over the comms. 2P produced a melt-a-bomb and slapped it to a heavy blast door, then led his team back to cover. The charge detonated. A heat wave roared through the corridor, plasteel flaring white and collapsing into steaming rubble. Light from behind the door cut into the player's armor in brief, scorching bursts. The defenders had stacked armor and emplaced melta and laser cannons in the narrow choke, the passage filled with spraying beams and the metallic tang of dissociated air. The fire was fierce. Players ducked and dispersed to avoid the worst of it. Shi Lang hummed tunelessly as he lifted his force stave. Psionic energy shimmered, and warp shards coalesced at his side. With a gesture, the shards burst into the corridor like a meteor shower, punching through helmets and skulls. "Charge!" War Master strode in, greatsword slicing a soldier clean at the waist. "Aren't those lyrics wrong?" he asked as he cut down another. "How could they be wrong?" "I've sung them since I was a kid," Shi Lang replied. Zhuje rolled his eyes, unimpressed, and kept firing. "Who's stronger, Ultraman or the Chaos Gods?" he mused aloud. 2P, wrapped in shadow, lunged through a gap and shredded a group of soldiers with his claws. "Chaos Gods!" Shi Lang shrugged. "They're incorporeal, psionic. With a flick, they'd crush Ultraman." Two distant heads popped as bolter rounds detonated. "No way. Noah's light power can blow up greater demons. Gods or no gods, it's about the box office," Wristbro argued, ripping apart another defender with his roaring chain axe. "Whoever pulls bigger crowds is stronger," Shi Lang said with mock seriousness. "Zhuge is right. Whoever has higher box office wins." They argued and slaughtered in the same breath, clearing the defense line and splitting into their assigned squads. The ammo depot was held by renegade Adeptus Mechanicus elements. Tech guards altered by horrific augmentation stood with heavy servitors, towering engines of war bristling with big guns. 2Pi's stealth and cruelty paid off. He killed several mech priests in quick succession, sowing confusion. Players poured in with bolters and chainswords. Bolter volleys erupted, spitting out a storm of rounds that tore through servitors and twisted modified tech guards. A laser-equipped tech guard peeked out and his skull was shattered by a bolter shot. Plus enemy. Confirm action plan plus, a dying servitor bleeped. Plus, confirm. It never finished. Chainswords rended metal and flesh, dark lubricants mixed with blood as servitor chassis were torn open. By the time the smoke cleared, 2Pi's squad controlled the ammo depot. At the main reactor, Shi Lang led a merciless charge. "Madness, utter madness," roared Ha Shi, a Dark Angels player in power armor, cutting, hacking, and screaming as he cracked through lines. Warp light shimmered around Shi Lang. He kept the rear secure and used his psionics to snipe heavy gun emplacements with eerie precision. Bodies piled, blood streamed. They fought until the reactor platform belonged to them. With the reactor and depot secured, both squads reported in. War Master keyed the comm channel and began organizing the final push for the bridge. The ship had been split open. Now they would take its heart. 107. Recapture of Scintilla, the War Master, who had been controlling the pace of the assault on the bridge, had not rushed its capture at first. He feared the enemy might detonate the ammunition depot and the main reactor. But when he learned that Shi Lang and 2P had already taken the reactor and the depot with their teams, he gave the order to strike the bridge. Astartes squads surged forward, a storm of gunfire and wildly swung blades. The War Master himself led the assault, charging at the head of the line. An explosion tore through the last defensive perimeter. Several rebel soldiers in riot gear were hurled by the blast. A melta charge blasted the final bulkhead open. The remaining defenders inside the bridge crouched behind control panels and jury-rigged barricades, and when the players flooded in, they rose and fired. "Fire! Kill them!" the captain cried, ordering his personal guard to hold the line. But before the War Master and his veterans, their resistance was only a brief, dying fit. In another bloody sweep, anyone who raised a weapon was cut down. The bridge was a scene of carnage, blood everywhere, scattered limbs, shattered control consoles, sparking and smoldering. The captain of the defenders had his head blown off by the War Master's shot. "Enough! Surrender!" a military officer stammered, voice trembling. Fear rippled through the survivors. "You oath breakers!" A blond man spat at the officer trying to capitulate. The War Master strode over, dragged him out, and the man shouted defiantly, voice shaking but firm, "I will never bow to the corpse emperor's servants." "I don't need you to bow," the War Master said coldly. "I only need you dead." He plunged his blade into the man's chest. Crimson flooded the deck and ran along the nearest machinery. He drew his sword free, tossed the corpse aside, and called out, "Is there anyone else who wants to resist?" Silence answered. No one dared speak. "Since there is no more resistance, this place is under my command. Turn the cannons and blast those traitors hard." He offered a final, vile mercy. "If you can score enough kills, I will intercede with the guide and ask for clemency for your death sentences." The promise, twisted as it was, gave the captives a sliver of hope. They scrambled to man the stations, clearing bodies from gun decks and returning to their posts. Under the War Master's orders, the captured exemplar St. Fist trained its batteries and opened fire on its former allies. Rebel ships, taken by surprise, went up in flames. The fall of a battleship to boarding and capture was a devastating blow to rebel morale. When another battleship, their makeshift flagship, was struck down by the Imperial glory, the rebel fleet's resolve collapsed. Ships were lost in quick succession. The rebels broke off the fight and fled. "We lost just like that?" Scarface watched the Imperial fleet gain the upper hand and begin hunting down fleeing warships and armed merchantmen. His face was disbelief and anger. "Boss, we need to run." "Yes, we have to run." A subordinate's voice trembled. The Imperial Navy's firepower was overwhelming, and the leading warship was merciless. It struck like a tiger among sheep, annihilating their vessels. They couldn't hold their ground. They had plundered enough to make this retreat worthwhile, so Scarface barked, "Tell the brothers to retreat. We're done with this." Then the auger blipped and lights flickered across the bridge. Threat warnings filled every display. "Exemplar St. Fist, approaching from our aft," a crewman gasped. "It's not coming for us, is it?" another asked, voice pale. "Tell them we surrender. We surrender," Scarface shouted, frantic. On the bridge of the Exemplar St. Fist, the War Master stood high and calm, adopting the stiff piety of the guide. So invigorating, he thought, though he kept his face steady. "Sir, the pirate ship ahead is hailing us. They say they wish to surrender," a communications officer reported. The War Master's lip curled. "Surrender," he said softly. "We don't need many prisoners. A pirate thinks he can play both sides and be spared? Pass the order. Charge the lance. Let them know the Emperor's wrath." "Understood." The officer clicked away. Aboard the pirate ship, panic reigned. "We're locked, boss," the auger operator shouted, face ashen. "Did you hail them?" "Hailed, no response," the comms chief shouted back. "Keep hailing. Tell them if they accept our surrender, we'll do anything." The lance fired. The pirate ship was pierced and detonated in a blinding bloom of fire and debris. Kill added to the Emperor Numa battle group's tally. On the war scoreboard, their lead widened. The Emperor Numa battle group's score was now double that of the Eagle Soaring Nine Heavens warband, the group formed by players like Blood Pigeon and Nai Long. In the regional channel, everyone blew off steam. Blood Pigeon: "Damn it! We worked for this and they leap ahead. My MVP." "We're doomed. These traitors don't even have a fortress. How are we supposed to get war score?" War Master: "It's only an MVP. If you want it, work harder and take it." Master Versailles: "I'm buying a battleship when I get back. Loan or no loan, I don't care. Emperor class, even if I sell everything." "I happen to capture one. Want a low-price deal instead of trading contribution points?" "Really?" "Since you asked, of course it's a joke. A battleship isn't that easy to keep. Count on me to keep racking up war scores." Blood Pigeon: "Rats." On the bridge of the Imperial Glory, Inquisitor Codden stared at the fleeing rebel vessels, stunned. The battle had been merciless, and yet it had felt almost effortless, like cutting vegetables. With traitors in their ranks, muddled command, and officers reselling Navy supplies, a victory should have been a miracle. Here, however, the fleet had obeyed a single will from start to finish, his. That unity had crushed the rebel rabble. "Praise the God Emperor," Cardinal Ignatius intoned. "All is the saint's merit." "Saint, perhaps we should use the armed freighters to encircle and finish off the fleeing ships," Caden said, stepping up to Qin Yun with the suggestion. But Cardinal Ignatius interposed first. "The saint commands the battle now. We should not interfere too much." Caden pressed on, excited. This is an opportunity. If we can divert the armed freighters to attack in time, they'll take out more forces. Those freighters carry soldiers and supplies. Destroy them, and you cripple the enemy's ability to retake Scintilla and to rebuild. Qin Yun shook his head and rejected Caden's plan, and he made it clear that no one else would dictate orbital engagements to any of his generals. After the decisive Void victory, the Imperial fleet retook numerous orbital stations and defensive platforms around Scintilla. Next came the ground campaign. Qin Yun ordered sustained orbital bombardment to soften the rebel defenses. Dense salvos swept over designated drop zones again and again. Fleet sensors scanned and fed back the positions of enemy artillery and troop concentrations. Flight squadrons launched in waves, bombing rebel strongpoints and asserting air superiority. Sona's Colin, who had expected his co-opted fleet to hold, watched in disbelief as the rebels were routed. The force stationed around Scintilla had been almost 300 ships, capital ships, armed transports, and vessels recruited from pirates and defectors who'd thrown in with the Colin family. No one had expected such a complete defeat. The orbit was sealed, escape routes were cut off, and insurgents were trapped on the ground. We must hold and wait for relief, Sonas told the rebel leaders. When the Colin family sends a force, we'll turn the tide. On the Imperial Glories Bridge, Qin Yun slid his hand across the holographic map of Scintilla. The once proud hive cities lay in ruins. After the bombardment, the rebels' firepower had been crippled, and they could no longer contest the skies. Shieling, send the landing operation orders to all participating God-chosen. Have Ainge lead the legions ashore, he said. Right away, Master, came the bright reply. The landing operation message popped up on every player's data slate. Xiao Pang and the others were nearly in tears with excitement. It's finally our turn, someone cried. We've waited so long. I'm shaking. When will the harassment of mech players end? Another complained, half joking. Let's go. Let's go. P.S. Sorry, it's getting later and later. 108. Great victory. The cargo barge arrived in orbit above Scintilla. Thousands of transports descended like swarms of bees, ferrying soldiers to the surface in waves. The glow of their exhausts lit the sky, a scatter of moving stars seen from below. The transports were capacious. Each could carry an entire fully armed company. The most spectacular, of course, were the Adeptus Mechanicus drop vessels for mechs and industrial modules, enormous, pipe-thick hulks the size of city blocks, studded with heat-resistant plating and hidden deceleration thrusters. Inertia nullification fields hummed to protect precious cargo and guarantee a safe descent. Along with troops, they delivered the mountain of logistics a full offensive required: munitions, food, water, fuel, and the countless spare parts needed for both war and reconstruction. At the landing zone, the double-headed eagle banner fluttered. Soldiers filed out of hatches in neat ranks, forming disciplined phalanxes. The force was enormous and perfectly organized, the fruit of industrial might and educational reform. Each man was fully armed, armored in exosuits, eyes flashing with expectation and loyalty to the Emperor. Servo skulls with loudspeakers rasped the liturgy. Fight in the Emperor's name. Sacrifice in the Emperor's name. The Golden Throne awaits us. Priests moved through the ranks to bless the troops, promising prayers for the dead and passage to the Golden Throne. A great horn blasted, and the transport bay doors opened. Massive Zagu mechs lumbered out, their reactors thrumming and gears grinding, joining the cacophony of the landing zone. It's finally our turn to shine, one pilot said. Brothers, those warbands ahead have pulled too many points. We can't lose face. We must at least take third and fight for second. Focus on heavy firepower and fortifications. Leave the scattered troops to the auxiliaries. In the name of the Omnissiah, advance! Xiao Pang settled into the command seat, finding a comfortable posture for the coming fight. He rode in a Zaguzo II, the latest model from Dora Workshop. The reinforced exoskeleton core had modified for him lay in his armory, reserved for urban fighting. He already had a plan. Once the frontal assault finished and the war mechs had done their work, he and his squad would don exosuits and move into close-quarters combat to rack up more war points. The Hammer and Sickle battle group's leaderboard ranking was too low. Without effort, they simply couldn't catch the warbands ahead of them. These people were competitive, whether in Holy Terra or in-game. No one wanted to let one man hoard glory. Xiaopeng shouted with the others. For MVP, for honor and victory. In the name of the Omnissiah, shock those traitors. My cannon's thirsty. Charge, kill, kill. The warband answered in kind, horns blaring as the Zaguo-2s rolled forward. Scintilla was the capital of the Calixis sector, once a thriving hive world and a vital hub of the human empire. Two massive hives, Sibelius and Tarsus, dominated the planet, ringed by countless satellite cities. Corruption, bureaucracy, hereditary privilege, and heterodoxy had piled up long before war broke out. The upper classes chased wealth and status to an obscene degree. Brazenly believing themselves above imperial law, they preyed on the poor for sport. Hatred for the elite ran deep among the common folk, and when rebellion came, loyalist forces quickly faltered. Many citizens preferred a change that might be better than the old order. The Colin family controlled public opinion and used propaganda shrewdly. At the war's start, they invoked the emperor's name and made grand promises: loan waivers, redistribution of privileges, work and identity for the lower hives, equality and prosperity for all. Ignorant and desperate people believed the rhetoric and turned their guns on the loyalist elite, helping the rebels seize power. The promises were lies. Once the rebels held Scintilla, they reneged, empowering gangs, instituting mass conscription and taxes, and grinding citizens into factory serfdom to feed the war machine. Slackers faced brutal punishment. Many eligible men and women were subject to surgical brain implants, becoming mind-broken fodder for the Colin family's armies. The human empire's first objective was the satellite city of Ambrel Mobile City, a wonder built upon an ancient, self-propelled engine from the Golden Age. No one alive knew why the original colonists had constructed such a thing. Records showed the Ambrel machine had moved for 2,000 years, older than the current Imperium itself. Rebels and loyalists had fought viciously for control, leaving much in ruins, but many grand structures and factories remained. The rebels held Ambrel, forcing citizens into production and filling their ranks with conscripts. During the orbital bombardment, the rebels sheltered in tall buildings and underground tunnels. When the bombardment lifted and Imperial forces dropped in, they streamed out and bolstered defenses. Once the main army assembled at the landing zone, Qin Yun issued his orders. The sky filled with the thunderous roar of war engines. Leading the assault came armored divisions, tens of thousands of tanks grinding forward, their mass and thrust leveling rubble and bulldozing paths for the columns behind. Close on their heels came Zaguo-2 mechs and infantry phalanxes. The Zaguo-2s moved like war masters, with human soldiers swarming beneath them. Each footfall was a dull thud, like distant thunder heralding doom for the defenders. "Time to kill! Move out!" Xiaopeng barked. Sensors swept the ruins for targets. Heavy cannons charged, gleaming, hungry for a target. "Kill! Kill!" The warband roared in unison, horns blaring. In perfect formation, they pushed toward the moving city. "They're here. Prepare for battle. Send all cannon fodder to the front. We must hold the line. Reinforcements are on the way. We'll win." Colonel Aquinas barked orders from a bomb shelter command post, eyes fixed on a battlefield projection. Once an excellent Imperial officer, Aquinas had killed his superior and defected to the Colin family early in the conflict. His betrayal had been rewarded with rapid promotion. If he could hold Ambrel and stall the Empire's advance, he expected a brigadier's sash and more privileges from the Colin family. Ambrel was vast, its streets a tangle, its population swelling the ranks of slaves and fodder. Aquinas had several units under his command. He believed a few days' resistance would suffice. When the Imperial column entered the city, the battle erupted. Artillery thundered from fortresses, street emplacements, and hidden batteries. Beams and shells filled the sky. Even after orbital strikes, the rebels retained large-caliber weapons. The Zaguo-2s advanced steadily, taking the fire with their shields. Beams and shells danced off those barriers, unable to break through. A hidden heavy cannon flared, sending a scorching beam that sanged one Zagu-2's shield from blue to a searing red as overload neared. Two nearby Zagu-02s trained their muzzles and fired. With a thunderous blast, the fortress housing the heavy gun collapsed into a fireball, and silence followed. The damaged mech paused while its shield recharged, then continued forward. The mech's enormous frames crushed buildings as they pressed on, clearing a path. Heavy cannons roared, releasing destructive light beams. Missiles streaked overhead, saturating enemy positions. Fortifications and fire points were methodically torn down. Infantry and exoskeletons followed close behind. Rebel troops, poorly equipped in comparison, were forced into brutal, bloody, close combat. Imperial regulars wore Tomorrow Series exosuits, carried Gauss rifles, and fielded shoulder-mounted auto-tracking autocannons. Their firepower and defense were terrifying. Additionally, there were some 3,000 Astartes, cultivated with players' map gene seed, deployed in organized units under veterans and Star Realm Knights. These Astartes plunged like blades into defenses, and when they cracked a line, Imperial forces poured through under tank and mech cover to widen the breach. The rebels were powerless to resist. From the first engagement to the city's fall, the campaign for Ambrel lasted little more than an hour. "We must retreat, sir. Commercial Avenue's defenses have been breached. Friendly units are collapsing and fleeing." The comms officer burst into the command post, panic clear on his face. Aquinas stared at the projection in shock and fury. He'd calculated they could hold for 3 days. How had it been torn apart in an hour? "Their firepower is overwhelming," the comms officer said, voice tight. "Saturation bombardment to suppress fortifications, mechs to cover advances, then power-armored troops to pierce key points. Tanks and mechs sweep in to slaughter anyone left. It's the same pattern every time, and their soldiers are better equipped than our elite. Once they take a position, it's gone." "Damn it, we lost in less than 2 hours," Aquinas muttered. He had expected at least 3 days using the terrain. Now everything was collapsing. "If we don't retreat now, it's over. Other units have broken, and the slaves are in open revolt," the comms officer warned. "Go. Retreat." Aquinas knew the tide had turned and that escape was priority. He left the command post to flee, but screams and gunfire erupted outside. Dozens of Emperor's angels, power-armored warriors with strange markings, descended from the sky, laying down withering fire on the defenders. They were terrifyingly effective. Within minutes, they had massacred over 200 troops from 2 companies near the command post. Aquinas' face drained of color. He realized, with paralyzing clarity, why they collapsed so quickly. Those Emperor's angels were inhuman killers. Seeing them approach his hiding spot, Aquinas threw up his hands. "I surrender," he shouted, stumbling into view. "Just a colonel. Not worth much, but—" The War Master glanced at his rank and frowned with mild disappointment, but accepted the surrender. Prisoners were worth more in war points than dead men. Then a titanic explosion shook the battlefield, making eardrums ring. In the distance, a mushroom cloud rose slowly over the smoking ruins. The Hammer and Sickle battle group's latest spectacular kills were being broadcast non-stop on the player's regional chat channel, and the war leaderboard had shifted again. The Hammer and Sickle had surged to 4th place, only 80,000 war points behind 3rd. Look at the regional feed and the leaderboard. Damn it! Xiao Pang destroyed the enemy tank cluster and scored 50,000 points, Haigi said. "Oh my god! Those mech pilots are savage," Shishi Lang replied, staring at a distant explosion. "They're scrambling to rack up points and climb the rankings," Zhuge added. "If this keeps up, Blood Pigeon will struggle to hold 2nd place, unless there's another void battle." "Good thing we boarded and captured a battleship, otherwise we probably wouldn't have beat them to it," Haigui said, sounding relieved. "Don't relax," War Master warned. "Check for any decapitation missions. We need to keep consolidating our advantage. The battlefield can change in an instant." Aquinas had been captured, and many of his men with him. The human empire had swept through with terrifying speed. There were no real escapes. Soldiers were either taken prisoner or killed. The defenders of the Ambron Mobile City were routed, and the surviving troops surrendered. They would live, but be thrown into penal legions or penitent armies, or if they had committed particularly ugly crimes, turned into war servitors until every last bit of value was extracted. The human empire reclaimed its first city within half a day of landing and kept pushing. Shibei Liu Sea Nest World was named the next strategic objective. The human empire's army advanced like a razor, cutting through rebel defenses and marching toward Shibei Liu Sea Nest World. The Hammer and Sickle battle group fought on the front lines, spearheaded by tank clusters and infantry phalanxes that smashed enemy fortifications. The Emperor's cannon fodder battle group sent organized assault teams wherever the front was toughest. Several Thunderhawk gunships screamed over the battlefield and dropped War Master, Shi Si Lang, and other players wearing flight packs toward a rebel stronghold. The enemy had reinforced the position with armor plating and quick-setting concrete, installed heavy emplacements and artillery, and intended to use it as a blocking point. The Emperor's cannon fodder teams were tasked with removing the thorn. "Target updated, brothers. MVP mission," came the call. "Let's make it a good fight." War Master's flight pack belched propellant, fighting gravity as he flew toward the enemy works. The rebels saw what was coming, and the sky erupted into anti-aircraft fire, trying to stop the players from landing. "Holy crap, it's my turn to be unlucky this time. Damn it." Shi Chi Lang shouted over the comms. War Master turned and saw Shi Chi Lang's flight pack explode, engulfing him in flame. "Please observe a moment of silence for old Shi's brief departure. He was our friend, our brother, upright, kind, brave, and fearlessly perverted. Although he freeloaded and sent questionable pictures, he was still our good brother," Ningba Ren mocked in a priestly tone. "Oh, Emperor, old Shi has been sacrificed to you. Grant us strength." Hai Gui shouted. "Sacrifice a teammate, boundless magic power," 2P chimed in, following the joke. "Enough, stop the theatrics. Slow your approach and get ready to fight," War Master ordered. He cut his speed, raised his gun, and strafed the ground. The stronghold's armor was thick, with heavy emplacements at each corner and a cubic anti-aircraft gun in the center, blasting everything that came close. Many unlucky players had already been shredded. Those who made it down were met by swarms of enemies. Bolt guns barked back and hit hard. Rebels struck by bolter rounds exploded into gore. Players closed with chainswords and cut through any who resisted, turning the fort into a field of bodies. When it was over, the stronghold was theirs. War Master radioed Shieling and submitted the mission. After confirming the reward was correct, he accepted another objective and, without pause, pushed his team onward. Inside a large factory in the Hive cities, Zhongge and the other Culexus assassins from the Demon Hunter battle group stormed in. They slaughtered the gang members who stood in their way and freed Human Empire citizens enslaved there. After submitting the mission and watching the war points roll in, Zhongge's spirits lifted until he checked the war leaderboard. "Culexus assassins are trash in this version," he grumbled. "Forget topping the charts. They couldn't even crack the top 15. New player warbands had left them in the dust. The Culexus type caused a visceral repulsion in NPCs. Players might shrug it off, but NPCs resisted them, which made recruiting auxiliaries almost impossible. Without those forces, the assassins could only do small missions, and their war points stagnated. "Are you Human Empire forces?" a rescued man asked, approaching. "Someone will take care of you," Zhongge said indifferently. "We're only here to rescue. Other matters aren't my responsibility." "My name is Maxo. I'm an inquisitorial agent. I was supposed to investigate whether local gangs worshipped chaos, but I found traces of the Dark Corner Brotherhood." "This is serious. It could mean a demonic invasion. Take me to your commander. I need to contact the Inquisition." "You said demons might invade?" Zhongge, who had been listless, suddenly perked up at the word demon. His eyes lit like an MVP seeker who'd smelled the prize. Maxo instinctively took a step back. This reaction seemed a touch overenthusiastic for such bad news. "You said the Dark Corner Brotherhood might summon demons?" Zhongje pressed. "Yes," Maxo said. "The Dark Corner Brotherhood has resurfaced, and they appear intent on summoning Baal Mel." Maxo had been infiltrating gangs when he found the Brotherhood. The cult, linked to one of the 7 great demons, Baal Mel, Lord of Dark Flames, had plagued the Calixis sector for centuries. The Inquisition and the State Church had suppressed it before, but it always lurked, ready to reemerge. Maxo had discovered plans to summon Baal Mel and to seize Scintilla with the demon's power, but before he could investigate further, the war broke out. He'd been unable to leave his post, and when the gang he'd infiltrated got into a firefight, he'd been captured and sent to the factory as a slave, until the Culexus team freed him. "This can't wait. If they succeed, Scintilla is finished. I need a small team to deal with this," Maxo insisted. Inquisitor Kaiden requested to speak with Qin Yun. Qin Yun glanced at Zhongje, who wore eagerness on his face as if it had, pick me, "Pick me" written across it. "You'll lead a support squad for Inquisitor Kaiden," Qin Yun said, pointing at Zhang Jie. "No problem," Zhang Jie rattled off nervously. "Good, go." Qin Yun waved them off. As soon as they left the bridge, Zhang Jie broadcast to his squad in triumph. Finally, it's our turn. Everyone assemble fast. Demon incident on the table. We must seize this chance, dig up the demon cult's lairs, and compete for MVP. Whether the fight was in the void or on the ground, Calexis assassins rarely had the advantage, and their combat record kept them near the bottom. But this, demonic summoning, was their best chance. "In the Emperor's name, praise the demon Baal Mel. This will get us MVP," Zhang Ge crowed, half joking, half serious. Zhang Ge led the Calexis players of the Demon Hunter Battle Group, accompanying Inquisitor Kaiden and Maxo to investigate the demonic threat. Qin Yun watched their gunboat fly toward the Scintilla Hive world from the bridge porthole. "Demons running rampant. You can see them everywhere," Maxo had said, his voice full of urgency. A golden curtain of light fluttered across Qin Yun's HUD. "Congratulations, you've gained experience. LV14, LV15 skill learned, time adjustment. You can slow or speed the flow of time within a limited range. Tip: this skill adjusts time flow between players and the Warhammer universe by consuming faith points. Skill learned, Faith Blessing. Bestow the power of faith upon a devout unit. Blessed units temporarily increase warp resistance or gain greater power. Tip: this task can transfer faith points to players as a mission reward. Congratulations on reaching level 15. New authority unlocked. Once a region is saved, you will continuously receive faith point rewards from the Emperor." Qin Yun read the prompt, his brow tightening. He'd hit level 15. He could now issue faith point quests, but the faith points would first be deducted from him. Only when the Emperor evaluated a region and approved would the points be returned. "Damn it," he muttered. "This sounded like being a contractor, paying the costs up front and trusting the client to reimburse you. What if the Emperor defaulted? People used to default on payments, and something nasty would come knocking afterward," someone joked in his head. Qin Yun rubbed his chin. There were no guarantees, no collateral, no assets to mortgage. Sell the throne if necessary? He let out a short, weary sigh. "Master, Xiling requests connection," announced a comm. "Connect her," Qin Yun said. "A fleet has appeared in the void, suspected rebel reinforcements," Xiling reported. Qin Yun's brows drew together, and surprise flickered across his face. They had arrived fast. The rebels still had tricks left. "Order the warband to set sail and intercept them. Let those traitors learn the cost of coming here," he said. On the ground, Sona's Colin also received word of the incoming reinforcements. He shook off the despair and exhaustion that had clung to him after days of defeats and laughed out loud. "The reinforcements are here. Now it's our turn to counterattack. P.S. Sorry for the delay, no excuses. Last month's voting totaled 20s and 200, so I owe you one more chapter. After 4 chapters tomorrow, this arc will be over. It's finally winding down. I need a good night's sleep and then to fix the update schedule." War orders barked through the ship and the crew scrambled to their stations. Officers and sailors shouted as commands cascaded down the chain of command. The plasma reactor at the heart of the ship thundered to life and moved into full output. Sweat-slick hands guided giant mechanical arms, hauling massive shells from the ammunition depot to the gun deck and ramming them into waiting cannons. Tech priests and engineering officers intoned praises to the Omnissiah as they monitored the rising energy flows. Docking arm released, cables detached, attitude thrusters online. We are departing the port. Reactor output nominal. Energy distribution plan submitted. Qin Yun felt the faint tremor as the Imperial glory slid free from its orbital berth. Another battle was coming. Since arriving in this sector, it seemed every day was either fighting, en route to fight, or preparing for the next fight. Everything was war. Thankfully, the light-hearted players still around him helped ease the pressure, brief islands of levity in a sea of violence. Other warships peeled away from the docks and formed combat formations in the void to meet the enemy. "Master, we have an incoming communication. Should I connect it?" Xiling asked. Qin Yun nodded. The projection unit hummed and flared. A holographic image coalesced into a middle-aged man wearing a naval uniform. His eyes were sharp, disciplined, seasoned. "Are you the saint of the Corpse Emperor?" the man demanded coldly. Before Qin Yun could reply, Xia's voice cut in, sharp, shocked, furious. You actually betrayed the corpse emperor, you damned bastard. Not many in the Calixis sector rose to the rank of naval vice admiral. Those who did came from the most powerful families and had the sharpest talents. Among them, Petra of House Andre had been the youngest ever to reach that rank. The Andre family was an old military noble house in the sector, steeped in legend. It had begun in the M36, when the rogue trader Solomon Halleck charted an area beyond the Imperium's borders and named it the Calixis Expanse. The Expanse was a prize: Xenos empires, ancient ruins, rare minerals, and Golden Age relics. Adventurers, Mechanicus explorers, and fortune seekers poured in. In the M39 era, Praetor Gorgonis Anjou was elevated to Lord General Militant and, under the Terra High Lord's authority, launched the Anjou Crusade to claim the Expanse for the Imperium. The first and second phases went well, but the third was beset by setbacks. Power struggles among commanders almost tore the expedition apart, until a young general named Drusus rose, unified the forces, and led them to victory. After Anjou's death, Drusus became Grand Marshal and later the first governor of the Calixis sector. House Andre rose with that campaign. An Andre ancestor, a daring young captain, won distinction during the Crusade and retired as a naval captain. He also established a strict family edict: every Andre, male or female, must serve in the Navy until death or proud retirement. That ironclad tradition won the family favor with the military elite and steadily elevated its status. By Petra's generation, House Andre was sought after, and many expected Petra, who had become vice admiral at an unusually young age, to rise to full admiral or even Lord High Admiral one day. Petra, you still have a chance to turn back, Xia urged through the projection. Surrender, and the saint may show mercy for your repentance. Petra's mouth curled with contempt. The Corse Emperor's era is over, he said. It's senseless to keep pledging to a dead god. You think betraying that corpse will save you? Xia snapped. You'll pay for this, and the entire Andre family will be destroyed. Petra laughed, incredulous. You're wrong. My betrayal will elevate the Andre family to heights you can't imagine. This is wisdom, not folly. Xia stared at him as if he were already consigned. If Petra were facing her, his boast might have some chance. He was not. He was facing the imperial glory and its saint, the Emperor's appointed guide. Petra's bright future ended here. When Qin Yun caught sight of the enemy fleet's engine glows, the first salvo of missiles screamed from the other side. Light escort destroyers and frigates surrounding the cruiser and battleship screens launched anti-missile volleys. Tiny explosions bloomed in the void as defensive missiles met attackers. A few torpedoes punched through the interception field but slammed into the void shields of the larger warships. The resulting detonations made the shields flare and shudder. Raw destructive energy bled into the warp. They timed their fire well, Qin Yun observed. They calculated our velocity and launched the torpedoes to meet us. Petra is the most promising naval tactician of recent years, Xia said, a note of begrudging respect in her voice. The old guard put him on pedestals. Unfortunately, his story ends now, Qin Yun replied. Keep pressing forward. Chapter Master Sard, take the veterans to the teleportation deck and wait for my signal. When a breach opens in their shield, we board and decapitate their flagship. Qin Yun did not want a prolonged void engagement. The enemy outnumbered them. A victory at cost would be no victory at all. Better to end this swiftly with an unconventional strike. When the fleets were under 1,000,000 kilometers apart, they closed to firing range. Lances of superheated light carved the dark between them. Torpedoes fan-fired across intersecting paths as each side maneuvered to gain the advantage. Void shields shimmered, fighters and small escorts were shredded, and explosions blossomed into flaming shrapnel. As they closed in, Xia concentrated their broadside onto the enemy flagship, the battlecruiser Truth Light. The ship held a tilt to bring its port batteries to bear. Schieling's calculations found a seam in the Truth Light's void shield. A concentrated salvo smashed that seam, the shield collapsed, the hull ruptured, and a smoking breach tore open. Prepare to teleport for direct decapitation, Qin Yun ordered. The teleportation deck thrummed to life. Sard, the chapter master hardened by decades of brutal fighting, and a band of seasoned veterans readied themselves. The teleport priest engaged the matrix. A warp flash seared the air. The priest executed a ritual gear salute when the transfer completed. Praise the Omnissiah. Teleportation successful. On the Truth Lights Bridge, Vice Admiral Pitre had been calmly directing the battle. He was gifted at reading the field, at finding the course that favored him. The Corpse Emperor's loyal fleet was smaller and their maneuvers blunt. Their only hope lay in the warship currently brawling with his flagship. If he kept it contained, he had a strong chance of victory. "Sir, shield breach!" a signal officer shouted. "Patch it! Send armed teams to the breach. Be ready for boarding," Petra ordered. "Sir, etheric reactions spike. The enemy is teleporting," the augur master called out. A ring of electric light blossomed on the command platform. When it faded, Qin Yun and a pair of dozen warriors stood on the bridge. "In the name of the Emperor, all traitors shall die!" Sard roared. Weapons erupted. Guns thundered. Blades whipped, and armored fists tore through armor and flesh. 5 minutes later, the Truthlight's bridge was a ruin of scorched plating and broken lives. "It seems your family will not achieve the glory you imagined," Qin Yun said quietly as he stood over the trembling Peter. Peter's eyes widened at the sight of Qin Yun's figure and the dark, winged presence behind him. His tongue failed him. He could not form a protest. "No more words," Qin Yun said. "Pay for your betrayal." He swung his sword. Peter's head fell. The young naval genius who had been poised for legend died without glory. A communication icon blinked insistently on the captain's console. Qin Yun walked to it and activated the incoming link. "Vice Admiral Pitre, this is Sonas Colin, governor of the Scintilla Hive world. We are under heavy bombardment. Our defenses are near collapse. When will you win the Void battle and send us support?" "Governor Sonas," Qin Yun replied, voice cold. "Vice Admiral Pitre will provide you no support." "Who is this? Where is Vice Admiral Pitre?" the governor demanded. "He has already gone to hell before you. Now it's your turn. Are you ready, traitor?" "Go to hell, traitor." Chapter 111, version 2.1 update. "Damn it, who exactly are you?" The voice on the other end trembled with panic. Qin Yun answered slowly, enunciating each word. "I am the heretic psyker you once spoke of, the Emperor's saint, the savior of human civilization, and the guide of the Imperium." "No, this is impossible. How could Lieutenant General Petrie fail?" the other man shouted. Qin Yun said nothing further. He cut the transmission and turned to Sard. "Take control of this warship. Anyone who resists will be destroyed in the Emperor's name." "Understood, Saint." Sard strode away, the dreadnought's power claw humming as a ghostly blue force field flickered over it. Other old birds left the bridge with him, moving to seize the ship's critical stations. On the player's regional channel, the reactions were immediate. "Old bird, holy moly, the guide made his move." 10 minutes after boarding, he paralyzed the enemy flagship, Truthlight. "Oh my god." When I saw the real-time intel, I thought the system glitched. "Blitzkrieg? This is a blitzkrieg." Warmaster: "I thought I'd caught up to the guide, but I get over one ridge and there's another mountain in front of me." "You all laughing at the title E-Great Demon? Think it's a joke? In a bit, he'll be chopping fleets with a lance. Angron's scary, but the guide's going to be crazier." "Guide keeps getting stronger. Brothers, grind on. As long as the galaxy doesn't implode, we won't stop." "Your vision's too narrow. Even if the galaxy explodes, we won't rest." "You old bastard, have to compete even here? If you don't compete, what's the point of grinding points? What, you think I'll steal your second place? Am I scared of you? I'll show you a Warhammer 40k kamikaze squad." "Do you guys have to be this competitive? Damn it." Shibei Lucy Nest World was under siege, blanketed by Imperial artillery. Hive cities collapsed and burned. Fighters shredded the sky. Enormous bombs whistled down and detonated in deafening blasts that threw up choking plumes and little mushroom clouds. Each explosion shook the ground. After the tremors subsided, torrents of scorched debris rained down. Imperial forces stormed the hives like a tidal break. Zaku mechs stomped through the ruins, laying down accurate fire from heavy cannons and missile pods against rebel fortifications. Infantry in exoskeleton armor surged like a tide, slaughtering rebels who hadn't escaped. Tank clusters roared through rubble while gunships screamed overhead, raining fire on anything that moved. In the heart of the world, the traitor leaders had gathered. Sonus sagged into a soft chair after ending a transmission, his strength gone. He tried to rise and failed. "How is it? Did Lieutenant General Petrie win?" someone asked. "Yes. When will we counterattack? After we seize orbital control, we bombard them. They always use that trick, repay them in kind." Sonus didn't answer at first. He'd assumed reinforcements would crush the Imperials, that the Revenge Army would rout loyalists. Instead, Lieutenant General Petrie had been killed by that so-called Emperor's Saint, and their flagship Truthlight had been seized. How long had it been since Petrie's fleet entered Holy Terra? How could they be in this state so quickly? Was there any point in fighting on? The thought of capture chilled him. He knew the Inquisition and Ecclesiarchy's punishments for traitors were worse than death. A resigned look passed across Sonus's face. "Governor Sonus?" someone called, anxiety spiking in the room as everyone turned to him. "Have we been abandoned? Is there no support at all?" voices clamored. "We haven't been abandoned," Sonus said, his voice flat, "but there will be no more reinforcements." Eyes exchanged puzzled looks. "What do you mean?" "The reinforcements were defeated by the enemy. Lieutenant General Petrie is dead, killed by the Emperor's Saint." The room went deadly quiet, faces drained of color. "Dead? A Navy Lieutenant General? Dead just like that? What should we do, Governor?" one demanded. "The Imperial firepower is too strong. Surrender? Surrender is death too. Don't forget how the Imperium treats traitors." As the rebel leaders argued, Sonus pulled a pulse laser pistol from beneath his cloak, placed it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. A scorching beam burned through his skull. His dead weight slumped into the chair and then fell. The leaders snapped back to reality and fled, panic-stricken, abandoning Shibei Liu Sea Nest world. With their commanders gone, the rank-and-file had no will to fight. The defensive lines collapsed. What might have held for a while disintegrated into a one-sided slaughter. In the void, the enemy fleet reeling from its flagship's decapitation fell into chaos. Command fractured between officers of equal rank, and fear spread as quickly as confusion. Qin's forces seized the moment, pressed the advantage, and tore the disordered fleet apart. Bolstered by the Imperial glory's devastating firepower, once targets were locked, they were almost impossible to save. "Brothers, for the warband's glory, we must win. Find an opening and ram them hard." Blood Pigeon roared over the comms as he piloted his fighter. Players and Void Fighters dove into the fray, many loading their craft with high explosives for suicide runs. They aimed for tail thrusters and bridges. Crippling hits left enemy ships paralyzed. When they died, they resurrected with faith points after an hour and went back at it. That grind paid off. After the battle, the Eagles Soaring Nine Heavens warband, led by the Emperor Neuma battle group, pulled ahead by a narrow margin and took the top rank. "Damn it! That's not fair! You damned grinders!" War Master shouted in outrage. "Then let's all grind and see who outgrinds whom." Players from the Emperor Neuma battle group were relentless, like blooded chickens injected with stimulants. Whenever an important rebel leader was spotted, they arrived faster than ravening dark angels hunting fallen. With victory at Shibei Liu Sea Nest World, the Scintilla campaign moved into its cleanup phase. The last entrenched rebels were being mopped up. With some downtime, Qin Yun prepared the version 2.1 update. He planned to adjust the time-flow ratio between Holy Terra, the player's base, and the Warhammer universe so players could stay longer in-world. The catch was that longer in-world time meant longer offline periods, so Qin intended to extend the ratio gradually, letting players adapt and letting him observe their reactions to find the right balance. At the far edge of the galaxy, the dormant Haxorus Necron dynasty stirred. Mountain-sized black pyramids rose and flew from the surface. Crescent-shaped voidcraft slid from dimensional rifts like folded blades. Canoptek scarabs and spiders stripped living metal from ancient tombs, vaults, and tunnels, reworking it into hulls and stores. The planet's once-dead core was hollowed out, fissures cutting across it. The tomb pyramid floated up into the void, a terrible, magnificent monolith. Its passages were intricate, and countless tomb guards, Necron overlords, and vassal overlords stood like statues. Setek, pharaoh of the dynasty, stood before his cold throne. A blue star map hovered in front of him, symbols flickering to represent stars, planets, and spatial anomalies. The map was complex, far exceeding human charts, and it displayed both past and future positions of stellar objects. Setek studied the invaders' traces, parsing every scrap of data left by their incursions. Ahriman must die, he said, the voice cold and precise. He and all his followers must be annihilated. The star map shifted as he spoke. A line extended through the stars, stretching until it reached the region humans called the Calixis sector. Setek looked down at the overlords arrayed beneath his throne. One stepped forward and bowed. Our pharaoh, all obey your will. Setek tapped the star map with a clawed finger. I grant you the glory of annihilating the invaders. Go and accomplish it. I will, the Necron overlord replied, head bowed, voice reverent. Hehe, beat the devil to his knees and clench his teeth. Hehe, beat the devil to his knees and clench his teeth. Iron Gray City sat astride a magnificent, active volcano, its flanks bleeding hot, glowing magma toward the ocean. Compared to the two great hive cities of Scintilla, it was young, but it was already an industrial metropolis of tremendous scale. Many believed Iron Gray would one day become the jewel of Scintilla. Spires thrusting out of the volcanic crown, foundries burrowed deep into the planet's crust, all powered by geothermal furnaces at the core. The trade-off was air no one here could take for granted. Smoke and soot hung in perpetual clouds, and fresh, filtered atmosphere was the city's most precious commodity. Wealth showed itself in the strangest ways here. The extravagant paid to pipe garden world air into their mansions. After the Sibelius campaign, the Imperial Army fanned out across the planet to mop up rebellion. Iron Gray City was no exception. 400,000 heavily armed Atoma soldiers and 2 companies of Astartes were engaged in clearing operations. Traders mounted counterattacks now and then, but every strike was crushed under overwhelming force. With Qin Yun's permission, Inquisitor Kaiden had quickly organized a sweep for the Dark Corner Brotherhood. It didn't take long. Under interrogation, several rebel leaders admitted that the cultists had been sheltered within the city and gave up exact coordinates. Within hours, Valkyries were cutting through the smoke and ruin, weaving between burning blocks and shattered banners toward a giant foundry where the traitors hid. We're approaching the target, the pilot reported. Good. Let's make it a big fight, Zhang Jie said, glancing at the others. MVP depends on this. For the MVP, we have to make sure everyone knows demon hunters are the best. Yeah, the demon hunter job is second to none. Bai Lang, Qin Yun, and the rest of the Demon Hunter chapter, Calixis assassins all, nodded. Zhang Ge pushed a holographic map of the foundry to the chapter from his database. The Demon Hunter chapter was small by design. Zhang Ge only recruited Calixis, and Calixis were rare. Size didn't matter as much in the war rankings as averages did. Expel a great demon, and their war score would spike so high, other chapters would be left choking on dust. The Valkyrie eased down, engines throttling. The hatch yawned open, and Zhang Ge and the others jumped out to recon. Inquisitor Kaiden had also sent support squads in powered exoskeletons carrying Gauss rifles. They hit the ground in formation, taking advantageous cover. Kaiden and Uxo remained near the squads, heavily outfitted. Inquisitors were not weaklings. Those who'd spent years on the front lines sometimes outmatched even Astartes. The warp is churning, Kaiden said, his voice tight. He had psychic talent. We need to move fast. The Culexis felt nothing, an absence rather than a sensation, but they moved just the same. The foundry was like a mausoleum, a cavernous roof lost in dimness, great machines frozen mid-operation and riddled with bullet marks. On a wall, a massive 8-pointed star had been daubed in blood. Bodies hung from chains and were lashed to profane 8-pointed frames, some skinned, many with gouged eyes, nails driven through flesh. Blood dripped and pooled. Most were dead. The ones still breathing were hanging on to an edge of life. What beasts, grunted the squad commander. No mercy for cultists. Zhang Ge agreed. Voices answered from the foundry's black depths. Ready up, he said, switching his armor to combat mode. The squad raised weapons. Cultists marked with the 8-pointed star emerged from shadow. They never saw the punishment coming. Gauss rounds sang. The shots from human Gauss rifles were different from the Necron beams many thought of. The human weapons fired physical slugs enveloped in a stabilizing force field. The effect was the same. Atomic bonds were ripped apart. Targets hit by Gauss rounds disintegrated into dust and ash. Push, break through before they regroup, Kaiden barked. They ran. Cultists along the route evaporated under Gauss fire. Chaos sorcerers tried to rise and stop them with psychic assaults, but Culexis deadened their powers, rendering them inert, and they too were reduced to dust by the rifle squads. The team burst into a massive assembly hall where 1,000 enemies crowded the floor. Heavy weapon batteries opened up, filling the chamber with a hail of fire and screams. Zhang Ge and the others led the charge. The enemy's shots struck against personal shields and flared away. In minutes, the hall reeked of burning flesh and blood. The floor was a carpet of bodies. On an altar, a black-robed man watched the slaughter with a chilling smile rather than fear. "You're too late," he intoned. "Hands up! Kneel!" Kaiden shouted, leveling his weapon. "Feel the fear brought by my lord," the cultist began and stopped as a bullet punched his chest. He staggered, then collapsed dead. Kaiden stepped onto the altar and found a man strewn among blasphemous runes, a sacrificial circle carved around him. The dead cultist's lips twisted as something else bit into the air. It's here, he croaked, blood flecking his mouth. The temperature suddenly plunged. Moisture in the air froze, and space seemed to stretch outward like a torn curtain. A burning, black hell opened beyond reality, and a laughter from its depths echoed through the foundry. Baal, one of the 7 great demons of the Calixis sector, was arriving. To the Culexis, the warp distortion was a subtle shift. To everyone else, the world had become a furnace of night. The mortal on the altar convulsed as a demon entered his shell. Black flame sigils crawled across his skin, horns pushed through his brow, his eyes hollow and burning with shadow fire. "My lord," the surviving cultists cried, rapt with joy. They'd succeeded in dragging a great demon into the material universe. The foundry began to shudder, steel groaned and cracked, voices whispered in people's ears, gnawing at sanity. Kaiden paled. The demon's presence pushed at his psyche, threatening to spill him into screaming madness. The players behind him, however, were not trembling. They were grinning. "Charge, brothers," Zhang Ge shouted. "The MVP goddess is calling. Legs wide!" The Culexis hit the floor. Warp sorcery meant nothing to them. They hurt demons with blades and flesh. Baal, newly embodied, had not felt mortal hands in the material realm for an age. He had not noticed the Culexis until they were on him. "Children of Calamity," the demon snarled and swung one great arm, sending the first assassin flying. The next, Qin Yun, tackled him, knocking him off the altar. Baal smashed Qin Yun's helm, but the player clung on, refusing to let go and preventing the demon from stepping free. Another player plunged a blade through Qin Yun and into the demon, pinning both to the floor. "For MVP!" Qin Yun grinned through shattered visor glass as life bled out. They kept up a brutal, close assault, stabbing, slashing, grinding metal into demonic hide. The demon's vitality was terrifying. Even while suppressed by Culexis influence, it healed visibly. With a feral heave, Baal threw off the now-dead Qin Yun and tried to rise. Zhang Ge kicked hard at a knee joint. The demon crashed back to its knees. Players swarmed again, fists, blades, and knives. Kaiden called out, "Hold him! I'll bind him in that vessel." The Inquisition had long cataloged rites to contain greater demons. Kaiden, trained, powerful, and years deep in battle against the warp, began the ritual. With Moxo's help, he carved prayers and binding glyphs into the demonized flesh and intoned wards of confinement. "By the pact of demonic subjugation, I bind you to this body," he declared. Baal screamed as ritual power slammed into him. The spells sank in deep, anchoring the demon to the mortal husk. It could not return to the warp, nor escape, unless the prison was broken by some future cataclysm. Kaiden layered seals and bindings until the demon's power was choked down. When the last echo of the ritual faded, everyone exhaled. The black-robed man watched his plan die and shrieked in despair. They had spent years preparing, and all of it had been smashed. "Humanity is invincible," Kaiden said as he stepped forward, leveled his gun, and ended the man with a single shot. The head exploded. Silence settled like dust. Across the game world, chapters that had been vying for ranking checked the leaderboard and felt their worlds tilt. The Demon Hunter chapter had rocketed from last place to first, vaulting ahead of the second place Eagle soaring 9 heavens by a cliff-like margin. "Is the leaderboard broken?" Blood Pigeon typed. I told you not to go all out. See, you broke it, Dummo grumbled. It's not broken. Demon hunters are leading. Zhang Jie and his lot captured a demon host, Old Bird said. A demon host? Warmaster said, incredulous. I'm shaking with rage. Why weren't we on this? Shi Lang fumed. It's just MVP, Zhongge replied, casual. If you want it, work for it. Show off. Must be bolter execution, Blood Pigeon spat. No way someone's that lucky. Meanwhile, the Inquisition secured the demon host. The Dark Corner Brotherhood's cells across the city and related factions were rounded up and purged. The Scintilla campaign had reached its final stretch, with the Demon Hunter chapter temporarily on top. Qin Yun seized the moment to push version 2.1 live, fixing issues players had been complaining about. Update announcement. Hello everyone, Shieling is back. Through our efforts, Warhammer OL has a brand new upgrade. Below are some of the updated areas. 1. Optimize the war score model to ensure greater fairness and impartiality. 2. Optimize the loot distribution mechanism. Loot is not yours just because you pick it up first. In the same battle, players with higher war scores have priority in choosing loot. Internal chapter distribution and individual team distribution will not be adjusted for now. 3. After technical upgrades, the game time flow rate has been adjusted, temporarily set to 1-2, meaning 1 day in Holy Terra equals 2 days in game time. 4. Mission system upgrade. Guides will issue faith value missions. In addition to killing enemies, players will have more sources for faith value. Plus daily thought. Life is a prison. Death is liberation. The announcement went up on the official site with footage from the Scintilla campaign and the captured demon host. Videos and posts spread across forums and video sites. The servers were suddenly swamped with new users, and the web exploded with discussion. 113, Araman. Is this the return of Sanguinius? On the Warhammer OL official forum, threads exploded. People from every corner of the web poured in, and the comment count shot up to 999 plus in an instant. My goodness, do Warhammer players really eat this stuff up? What the hell is this? It's a feast of delicacies. The graphics, the textures, this is groundbreaking. Undoubtedly, a new technological revolution. Kind souls, help me. How do I play? How do I download? This is incredible. Pre-order now. It's decided. From today onward, I swear my loyalty to the Emperor. What a waste. If they'd used this tech for Star Wars or American comics, they'd be filthy rich. Pre-orders skyrocketed as players flooded in, and popularity took off like a rocket. The chat group was equally alive. Members who hadn't pre-ordered were whining in every direction. Guilliman is the son. Went to get a drink, and pre-orders already passed 3 million. Damn, no chance of getting into internal tests this lifetime. I want an open beta. Selected Little Alpaca of God. Terrifying. This game broke through. A bowl of lobster soup. I was the first to repost it. Gilliman is the son. Add a bowl of lobster soup. I'll kill you. Second Empire Warmaster. With Warhammer OL's quality, this popularity was inevitable. IP attention will spike. Many studios will want in. I wonder how GW will react. Pinocchio versus Snow White. Sources say GW's editors and executives are traveling. Domestic companies have tried to contact them for publishing rights with no reply. People are already flying to GW HQ to negotiate. One night output Slanesh 10 times. Stop talking outside the game. Talk about this update first, then post it on the forum. Group admin, one night output Slanesh 10 times muted the chat. This update adjusted the time flow rate, the admin posted. The official must have realized event spans across the Warhammer universe are huge. If they kept the old time flow, by the time Guilliman finished the Indomitus Crusade, only our grandchildren would be paying for it. The tentative ratio is 1-2. 1 real day equals 2 in-game days. There's hope we'll see Guilliman fight the Plague War in our lifetime. Of course, it's tentative and could be changed later, maybe to 105 or even 110, someone replied. The bigger the adjustment, the wider the gap between professional and casual players. Casual players could be pushed away. Most Warhammer fans have jobs and can't live in-game. Professional players make money and can stay online longer. If casuals drop out, the pros will too. Time flow is a delicate balance. Increase engagement without alienating the casuals. The second big update is faith value missions, the admin continued. Originally, you got faith by killing enemies, but monsters became scarce, so farming players couldn't accumulate enough faith to change vocations. This update likely opens loopholes, daily missions to gain faith, letting players change class, bind gear, or teleport. Loot distribution and war score models are improved to preserve fairness. One more reminder, be honest. Report to NPC guides and sealing first. Don't exploit bugs or you'll get blacklisted. Fat face who kisses Nurgle madly, Old Eleven's sharp as ever. The most courageous brother of Warhammer. War MVP, thumbs up? Second Empire Warmaster, damn it, duel tonight, address. Fat face kisses Nurgle madly. Tonight you die, or die. The most courageous brother of Warhammer. You lost and aren't convinced? Want practice? Qin Yun watched the bickering through the group chat while he planned the reconstruction of Scintilla. The planet had been devastated. Hive cities lay in ruins, but basic industrial foundations remained, and many skilled workers had survived. With the right resources, Scintilla could be rebuilt to serve the war effort. Qin Yun quickly drafted a Scintilla reconstruction plan and sent it to Governor Feng of Atoma, requesting human and material support. Shieling returned soon. Master, 32 messages from the old aristocrats of Shibe-Lucy Nest World and Tarsus Hive cities. They want their properties back and to resume their former positions to serve the Empire. Tell them to scram, Qin Yun said without hesitation, and tell them not to provoke me. If those rebels stir, I will respond. If the old elite got power back, all Qin Yun had done would be for nothing. Supporting the lower classes and the emerging military aristocracy was essential. Those who clung to ancestral glory and bloodlines could rot. They had no place in the new order. Understood, Master, Shieling replied and departed. Qin Yun sat at his desk, laying out priorities. The state church needed rapid reform. As a living saint, he could curb factions who preached suffering and self-flagellation. Faith was a weapon against the warp, but fanaticism had to be tempered. The Ministry of Internal Affairs needed a purge, cut redundancies, streamline the structure, speed up administration. The Thinker's processing speed had to be improved to handle more work. News of the Scintilla campaign would spread fast. The Collin family rebels would see him as a thorn and likely continue fighting. Welfare for the lower classes had to be strengthened to win their loyalty. He listed tasks, set priorities, and planned to tackle them one by one. The warp storm raged without mercy. A 3-kilometer merchant ship plowed through the turbulent Immaterium. This war is a crisis, but also an opportunity, Hargren, a merchant, mused to himself as the ship hummed. With Scintilla's reconstruction, our trade will expand. By the time I return from this route, my eldest should finish exams. She wanted a beautiful dress. My second keeps asking for a model ship. Our 10th anniversary is coming. I need a gift for my wife. He smiled at the thought of his family. When the Collin family had risen, Hargren had felt the sky collapse. After the Great Rift opened, the Astronomican's light could no longer cover the Calixis sector constantly. Navigation became perilous, the warp intermittent. Business faltered and rebels threatened everything. He'd taken his family to Atoma, desperate for safety. Then the saint returned, and with him came the promise of order. Merchants flocked when Scintilla fell under Imperial control, eager for opportunity. Hargren felt hope again. The saint even provided a navigation lighthouse for warp travel. Follow its light, and you could reach Scintilla. Sir, the etheric resonator is showing strong fluctuations. The Jeller field is being impacted, a technician called. The merchant ship exited the warp and blinked back into real space, near Holy Terra. But they had no time to confirm position. The Jeller field snapped shut behind them. Alarms shrieked inside the hull. A warship was nearby. A psychic flare ignited in the void, and a cold, terrible presence spread. From a blinding light, several warriors in power armor stepped forward. Hargren saw the arcane runes traced across their armor and paled. He had heard stories of Cadia and the Great Raider, and of fallen angels who betrayed the God Emperor. These were them. Fire! Hargren barked, and his armed crew obeyed. Before a volley could be launched, the leader raised a staff that pulsed with eldritch light. Every crewman who tried to resist exploded as if their minds were ripped apart. Resistance only brings more death, a majestic voice said inside Hargren's head. The name came with it, Ahriman. You have the information I need, the voice continued. No, Hargren cried, powerless as the intruder's psychic force closed over him. I will never tell you. You don't need to tell me. Armin's voice was calm. Then came a scream, and Hargren felt his memories being torn open. How could an ordinary merchant resist a legendary sorcerer? Armin breached his mental defenses and plundered his memories at will. Images filled Armin's mind as he sifted through the merchant's impressions. So many Astartes, an odd picture, then a figure with wings, an aura of light. Did I travel back to the Great Crusade? He muttered. And, is this Sanguinius? Seeing the recalled visions, Aramin's eyes widened in shock. Aramin peeled back the layers of the merchant's memories, and there it was, the face of that saint. He had the height and bearing of a Primarch, tall, statuesque, striking in a way that should have recalled Sanguinius. But the features were different. Not Sanguinius at all. Aramin let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For a moment before, he had been certain the figure upon the golden throne had finally broken and was about to drag the galaxy down with him. Memories of Terra flooded him, the Battle of Terra, Horus's duel with the Emperor, and the strange library where Aramin had once found a book about the Dark King and heard the Dark King's echo. That echo was of a true god, born of anger, hatred, despair, and death, created for destruction. The Emperor had refused godhood. He had killed Horus as a man and cast the Chaos gods out. Abaddon's smashing of Cadia had been folly. It strengthened the Emperor and drew his interference closer to Holy Terra. Abaddon could not kill the Emperor. Even if he could come to Terra again, he could not slay the Lord of Mankind. The Emperor could have become a god then, and he still could now, if he abandoned humanity entirely. The galaxy's end would be annihilation. Humanity, Holy Terra, the gods of the warp, all consumed. No one knew how long the Emperor could endure upon the Golden Throne, nor what fate the galaxy would face should he refuse to shield humanity any longer. Aramin tried to read and manipulate the threads of this saint's fate. He found nothing. It was as if a black sun in the warp burned away every strand that led to him, leaving no future for even the gods to chart. He released his grip. Hargren's corpse slumped, lifeless, to the deck. The merchant's eyes stared at the ceiling, wide with panic and confusion. He could not accept what had happened to him. A photograph slipped from his pocket, his wife and children, an emblem of what had sustained him through the nightmare of the warp. Aramin bent and picked it up. "A nice family," he murmured. "What shall we do next?" asked Ctesias, one of his lieutenants. Ctesias was no veteran of the Wars of Age, a new recruit, cultivated 500 years ago through ritual and gene seed. Among the Thousand Sons, there were sorcerers born of ceremonies rather than the Legion's mature lineage. They pledged themselves to Magnus, and if they survived, became sorcerers. If not, they broke or died. Aramin was about to reply when his face changed. "Here it comes again." Ctesias's expression shifted at once. Heat poured through him as if he'd inhaled furnace air. A red-letter warrior nearby trembled. Strange acoustic banshees writhing inside his power armor as if he were screaming without a mouth. There was no time to act. It felt like a firebomb had detonated behind Ctesias's eyes. White light, roaring, towering flames consuming everything. He saw nothing but flame. The pain and blistering heat, like a firestorm's howl, seemed endless. When it ended, Ctesias found himself kneeling, his mouth tasting of smoke and ash. Beside him, a red-letter warrior had been reduced to cinder. The echo of his soul was gone. "The warnings are fewer and stronger," Aramin said, voice raw. "They will not stop until they burn us to ash." Ctesias rose slowly, bitterness on his face. This was the after-effect of their second red-letter ritual, the evil fire backlash. That massive spell had not concluded cleanly. Like a forest fire, it had spiraled out of control, only ceasing when everything in its wake was consumed. Aramin had tried to change the fate of the Thousand Sons. He had gone to Gomorrah and wrested the death letters he needed from the Blood Pigeon and the Cabal leaders. He had enraged them. Dark Eldar assassins had been dispatched. The High Lords of Gomorrah swore the Thousand Sons would pay. He had broken into the tomb of the Haxos dynasty and taken an artifact that could manipulate time, enraging the ancient Necron Pharaon. Overlords must have been sent in pursuit. His final stop before recrossing into the Eye of Terror had been the Calixis sector. Tzeentch's daemon Carlos had told him there were pure Thousand Sons there, untouched by the evil fire backlash. Ahriman had watched Atoma planet from the shadows, a prosperous human world with a progressive atmosphere, layered defenses, and thousands of Astartes. From Hargren's mind, he learned the full truth. Atoma harbored far more forces than he'd first assumed. Tens of thousands of Astartes, including those still unawakened. The scale shocked him. During the Great Crusade, the great legions took years to amass such numbers. Here was a single world with legionary strength at its disposal. What did that so-called saint intend with such power? Conquering the Calixis sector would be easy for him. Ignis, another Thousand Sons sorcerer, asked, "Shall we strike Atoma?" Ahriman shook his head. He would not risk his small force against a legion-sized host. Starting a war would be suicide. First, we must deal with the pure Thousand Sons. "What will you do?" Theseus pressed. "I have a plan." Ahriman relaxed his hands and, with an almost casual motion, allowed Hargren's corpse to stand. The merchant straightened, blinked, and returned to his captain's seat, as though nothing had happened. The freighter's crew resumed their duties, with no sign of the recent terror. "The warp storm has abated," the navigator called. "We can proceed." "Then resume course," Hargren ordered, voice steady. Scintilla. The Geller field hummed to life around the hull. The warp drive roared, tearing a rift, and paradoxical light spilled like an incoming tide. The freighter slipped back into the warp and now raced for Scintilla. The battle for Scintilla was winding down. The Emperor Neuma battle group had been frantically boosting their KPIs, clawing, digging 3 feet deep if they had to, but they'd secured only 3rd place. 4th went to the Hammer and Sickle battle group, and the loss tasted like bile to Xiaopang. They'd aimed for 3rd and even 2nd, and everything had been going so well until the Hunter-Demon battle group suddenly arrived and pushed them down the standings. For days, the Hunter-Demon group had sneered at the others. Little taunts tumbled out. "It's only an MVP, why boast? Why grind when you can nab a demon host?" Players from other warbands ground their teeth in hatred but bit their tongues. The campaign wasn't over. If the Hunter-Demon battle group could catch one demon host, could they seize all 7 great demons of the Calixis sector? Could they even take on the notorious Tyrant star? It was a fluke, one said. In large-scale fights, luck swings like that. True glory is in void combat, aerial combat, and ground assaults. Don't forget, Psychers can capture demon hosts too. Zhongge only shrugged and said lightly, "Sour grapes. Right now, we're the MVP. We were the underdogs, and we tried the hardest." His grin undid the fragile calm of several players. They mobbed him, pinned him, and beat him up until he had 2 black eyes. He laughed through it, which only made them angrier. When Qin Yun finished his assigned duties, he called the players together to distribute the spoils. Everyone had fought. No one wanted the prize handed to the fastest snatcher. "First item," Qin Yun announced, "the Exemplar Saint Fist battleship. The Emperor Neuma battle group made the largest contribution. They have first purchase rights and a discount. If other warbands want it, they'll have to pay at least twice the price offered by Emperor Neuma," he added. "Also, Imperial Navy ship officers require military rank to join an operational chain. Players who buy warships must either spend contribution points and merits to obtain ranks or hire NPCs with ranks. Players may buy on credit, but must repay within a time limit." Players glanced at one another. Blood Pigeon did the math in his head and shook his head. A battleship's captain was usually a general in the Navy. First officers were senior colonels. Beyond the purchase price, there were personnel costs, maintenance, and the overhead of integrating a vessel into an official fleet. Few players had the resources to make it worthwhile. "Then the Exemplar Saint Fist belongs officially to the Emperor Neuma battle group," Qin Yun declared. The Neuma group erupted in cheers. With that warship, they'd be more confident of future MVP grabs. Shi Qi Lang, Hai Gui, and several others immediately threw a cloak over their war master. Not a mantle of justice, but one emblazoned with the word loyalty. Heavy double-headed eagle epaulets sat on his shoulders, and with his greatsword strapped to his back, he cut a thrillingly absurd figure, a Warhammer 40K riff on a pirate captain. The War Master flung his cloak and bellowed, "Loyalty!" The others stared, bemused and amused. Xiaopang muttered, "How do they even come up with this stuff?" Blood Pigeon snorted. "You're an Astartes wearing a navy cloak?" Zhongge admitted with a rueful grin, I suppose my imagination isn't bizarre enough. Qin Yun's mouth twitched. Never underestimate the fourth catastrophe's flair for showmanship. He finished auctioning the captured frigates and cruisers, items players didn't claim would be absorbed into the Imperial Navy. When the meeting broke up, the warbands that had taken part were nearly bankrupt, their contribution points drained and debts heavy. Xia, Kaiden, Ainge, and the others standing by were aghast. They had fought and ended up in debt. In any conventional military unit, mutiny would be inevitable. Yet the players seemed oddly content, a mentality that baffled the onlookers. As Qin Yun wrapped up the distribution, a herald appeared at his side. "Master," Shieling reported, "Lord Guilliman has sent a communication request. Shall I accept?" "Guilliman?" Qin Yun frowned, then nodded. "Connect it." The quantum resonance device hummed, drawing signals from the far side of the galaxy. The holographic projection refreshed as data streamed in and finally resolved into the familiar face of Roboute Guilliman. "Regent," Qin Yun said. "Saint," Guilliman answered. "I'm sorry to trouble you." "You're not troubling me." Qin Yun studied Guilliman's expression. "Has something happened?" Guilliman nodded. "There are matters that require your counsel, Saint. A disease, called the Tear Plague, has broken out in the Droll, Thalassa, and Parmenio systems." After Qin Yun left, Guilliman had launched an expedition at once. With the Pharos Lighthouse's assistance, the campaign moved far faster than expected. Loyalist forces fought with fierce determination and pushed the Chaos warbands back. Yet just as the Loyalists began stringing victories together, the Tear Plague appeared. Patients wept uncontrollably. The tears were viscous and rank, coating faces and causing severe swelling. It spread fast. Strangely, though, when Guilliman entered an afflicted locale, the plague vanished, only to flare up again in the places he left. "Is this Nurgle's doing?" Qin Yun asked. Guilliman grimaced. "Yes, Grandmaster Woldes advised I abandon Ultramar and return to Holy Terra. Because the Tear Plague is a work of the Plague God," Guilliman continued. "Whenever I arrive, Nurgle withdraws his blessing. The moment I depart, it spreads again." "We argued about it," Guilliman added. "I cannot stand to see Ultramar suffer. I wanted to stay, but I contacted you to hear your view." "You care too much for your people," Qin Yun said softly. "Benevolence is a ruler's fatal weakness. Your enemies will exploit it to bleed you dry. Your father is occupied, Holy Terra demands attention, and your brothers remain missing. Roboute, you are humanity's best hope, and the only one currently positioned to unite the Empire. You must learn to fight chaos differently. Hide your plans and thoughts, as your father did, so the enemy cannot read you." Guilliman lowered his eyes, an almost rueful smile touching his mouth. "I finally understand why so many of Father's actions were peculiar. From my perspective now, his judgment was terrifyingly complete. He challenged the gods with mortal means and intended to unseat them." Qin Yun held Guilliman's gaze. "If your father were here, what would he do?" "He would not hesitate," Guilliman said. "He would abandon Ultramar, return to Holy Terra, assume command, and then marshal forces to strike back." "You already know the answer. You contacted me only to confirm it," Qin Yun said. "Then go to Holy Terra, Regent. If you remain trapped on Macragge, you'll be like a fly in a jar, unable to influence the wider war. You must properly take your place as ruler. Necessary sacrifices will have to be made." "Ultramar is not helpless," Qin Yun added. "Commander Calgar has held things together admirably. Give him the authority he needs. I will see to it that Ultramar is cared for. I'll place a god chosen at Calgar's side, and if he faces a problem he cannot overcome, I will intervene." Guilliman's features softened, a small smile replacing his furrowed resolve. "Thank you for your counsel, Saint. For the sake of human civilization, hard decisions must be taken." Before the link closed, Guilliman added one more item. Archmagos Corps was installing a small lighthouse on the Macragge's honor. Once complete, the honor and the Imperial glory would have instant communications. Qin Yun was surprised. He had expected Guilliman, given his temperament, to hesitate and watch Sotha for a while, weigh, test, then act. Perhaps the Tear Plague had convinced the Primarch of the vital importance of secure, immediate communication. For now, only the Macragge's honor would carry the new lighthouse, but it was enough for Shieling to assign tasks and distribute rewards remotely. The projection winked out. Qin Yun pondered Guilliman's pilgrimage. As the only active loyalist Primarch, Guilliman drew the god's attention and the traitor Primarch's machinations. Magnus, Fulgrim, and others could appear at any moment. Danger stalked every step of the way. Master. Xieling's small angelic form interrupted his thoughts. What is it? Qin Yun looked up at the little angel. The list for the 9th batch of players is out. Do you want to review it? She asked. Let me see. Qin Yun pushed thoughts of the pilgrimage aside and attended to the matter at hand. A projection rose, 18,000 player IDs. He scanned the list and paused at the 9,999th slot. He frowned. Guilliman is the son, Xiling read aloud. Old 13? Has he changed his name? Qin Yun mused. Selected for the 9th time. Again that number. Does the Emperor have some connection to Tzeentch? Xiling leaned closer. Is something wrong, Master? Qin Yun shrugged. Nothing to worry about. Leave it. He wasn't dismissive out of carelessness. If the Emperor were truly controlled by Tzeentch, assigning Old 13 a slot would be pointless. If not, it might simply be coincidence, though the relationship with Tzeentch intrigued him. Could Old 13 be favored by the Changer of Ways? Okay, Master. I'll distribute the helmets, Xiling said and took the list. With the game slots distributed, the Warhammer OL official forums and chat groups sprang to life. Chat group, Guilliman is the son, laughing.jv, showing-off.jag, arrogant. I got it, brothers. I finally got in. Selected little alpaca of God. What's up with Old 13? I don't want to be a stinking can. Did you become Fan Jin? One night outputs Slanesh 10 times. He's delirious with joy. Needs a godfather to slap some sense into him. Second Empire Warmaster. Child, don't worry. Your godfather's here. Count me in. Only wants to progress. And me. One night outputs Slanesh 10 times. At Guilliman is the son. Didn't think you had so many godfathers. Guilliman is the son. Shut up, shut up. I got a closed beta slot, not Fan Jin. I'd given up hope. This is a ray of light in the dark. Ningba Ren uses Ningba Hammer. You didn't use Tzeentch's luck transfer trick, did you? Dora is the lord of myriad machines. Selected 9 times. Definitely worships Tzeentch. The big bad wolf who plays Red Riding Hood. You damned chosen of Tzeentch. Where's the Inquisition? Guilliman grumbled. I'm loyal to the Emperor. There aren't 2 suns in the sky. In my heart, there's only one, the Emperor. Look who's talking. Your ID says it all, the group teased. 3 days later, the 9th batch of players logged in. As always, the starting point was the cathedral in Tyrian Hive City. Nearly 20,000 people logging in simultaneously made for an impressive spectacle. City officials had to deploy personnel to keep order. Veteran players like Dora and MC Myth arrived early, looking to recruit. There are so many newbies this time, one veteran said, hoping for SSR-level talent, engineers, pilots, naval hands. Pilots! We need pilots. Any ex-Navy? We need Navy. A commotion rippled through the crowd. A player much larger than the rest fumbled at his face with both hands, bewildered. Though he was only level 1, his physique rivaled an Astartes, over 3 meters tall, only slightly shorter than the Primarchs, with a ponderous simplicity in his eyes. Holy crap, an Ogryn? Someone shouted. Is it a hidden character? Do hidden characters actually exist? What are the conditions? Dora and MC Myth exchanged a look, stepped through the crowd, and approached the giant. Are you Old 13? Dora asked. The Ogryn touched his head and nodded. Who are you? I'm Dora. Old 13, you still denying you're a chosen of Tzeentch? She teased. I'm an Ogryn. How does that prove I'm a chosen of Tzeentch? He replied, baffled. Dora held up her hand. Count my fingers. When you're done, I'll tell you what the fuss is about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, he said, matter-of-factly. Now tell me. The ode updates are all done. 116. Carlos's shock. He really is a god chosen of Tzeentch. Carlos would cry himself to death if he saw him. From now on, this big brother's place in Tzeentch's heart far surpasses Sanguinius. He's become the white moonlight destined to ascend to daemonhood. Sanguinius? Isn't it Magnus? You mean that sunburnt, one-eyed Ogryn with astonishing wisdom? Didn't he already get what he wanted? What do you mean? What you get is rotten tea dregs. What you can't get is called white moonlight. A brilliant insight, General. The nearby players buzzed with lively chatter, their faces ranging from surprise to teasing as they looked at Old 13. Old 13 stretched out his hand and stared at his 10 fingers. In that moment, he finally understood why everyone was so stunned. How could there be an Ogren in the Warhammer universe who could count to 9? Counting to 7 was already Tzeentch's doing, the limit reached only by exhausting countless greater demons. To make an Ogren count to 10, the one who taught him would probably ascend to daemonhood themselves. Unfortunately, given the faction division in the game, he was on the Corpse Emperor's side. Counting to 10 was also the Corpse Emperor's kind of miracle. Tzeentch could not simply elevate the Corpse Emperor to a greater daemon. A destined god chosen of Tzeentch. Zhongge will definitely like you, Dora said, patting Old 13's broad shoulder and chuckling. Old 13's expression immediately darkened. Zhongge, the chapter master of the Demon Hunter battle group, loved daemons and heretics most of all. Like him, was Zhongje planning to use him as cannon fodder to boost KPIs? Welcome to hell, Corpse Emperor's cannon fodder, someone muttered. A projection flickered to life above the crowd in the church. Sealing's figure appeared, part of the welcome scene for new players logging in. Thanks to the quantum lighthouse, Sealing's consciousness could ignore distance and blanket the Atoma planet, receiving and broadcasting information in real time. This wasn't a pre-stored hologram, but a live feed. As she finished her opening remarks, Sealing caught sight of the Ogren standing out from the crowd and paused, momentarily stunned. Even as a star god, she felt a twinge of surprise. She swallowed it, delivered her lines flawlessly, and then let the players move on. Flesh is weak, mechanical ascension. Join the Adeptus Mechanicus battle group and embrace great evolution. True men must be Astartes, carrying guns and shooting. State Church players exclusive. Any brothers or sisters want to go battle sisters or priest? Welcome to Crimson Rose. Magic is king. Magic is truth. Brothers, Hogwarts welcomes you. As the scale of war expanded, all chapters were short of manpower. New players streaming in began recruiting immediately. Any engineering students? Dora Workshop is recruiting with heavy rewards. Join now and receive an exoskeleton suit and a chainsword. Dora and MC Myth manned a recruitment booth. A servitor Skull's loudspeaker repeated the pre-recorded pitch. Do you recruit agriculture students? Asked a new player with the ID growing mushroom in golden toilet, squeezing up to Dora's booth. Sorry, Dora Workshop focuses on mechanical types. Agriculture isn't really suitable, Dora said politely. All right. Mushroom scratched his head and moved on to the next chapter. So far, no one had formed an agriculture-focused chapter. The Adeptus Mechanicus handled those disciplines. Mushroom felt deflated. He'd hoped to use his expertise to make a splash in the game, grow mushrooms in a virtual world, but there were no agricultural chapters at all. He was so angry he trembled. Did farming gameplay not include farming? He just wanted to grow mushrooms. Hey brother, you into agriculture too? A player with the ID Rice Saint Father called. You too? Mushroom brightened. I'm from Huadong Agricultural University, Rice said shyly. I heard this game is 100% realistic. You can repair machines and do research, so I thought I'd come do agriculture. One of my roommates got selected with me. Rice nudged another new player over. Potatoes are also coarse grains. I'm from Dongda Agricultural University. Mushroom explained that he'd asked around and found nobody doing agriculture. Feels like nobody really wants farming. It's not that they don't like it. This game emphasizes realism, and technical play requires real knowledge. There are already few people doing agriculture on Holy Terra, so even fewer would enter the game, Rice said, confident. If there's no chapter, we can form our own, farming and combat. Look, we already have 3. Get a few more, and we can form a group. Then we'll pool funds to form a chapter, buy research institutes and plantations. Mushroom nodded. Will you help me catch orcs so I can study mushroom cultivation? Of course. On the other side of the plaza, King of Mountain Blade eyed a new player with the ID running towards the sea. Your Holy Terra profession is cargo ship captain? Do you know how to command a warship? Never piloted one, but a cargo ship's similar, the sea said. I can learn. You're a talent. I'll let you join the Emperor Numa battle group. The boss bought a warship and we're short on crew. After novice training, you'll head to Scintilla. King of Mountain Blade registered him and had him stand aside. After recruitment ended, all the new members would be sent to novice training together. Those who hadn't found a suitable chapter or preferred to be lone wolves left to do their novice quests. Newbie Quest, complete basic training. Having just arrived, you must be unfamiliar with this world. The wise planetary governor Feng has a tailored set of newbie training for you. Requirements: accept training from the newbie instructor and become familiar with basic operations such as firearms. Rewards: 500 contribution points, 5 honor points. As a longtime member of the Emperor's Cannon Fodder chat group, and by virtue of his Ogren physique, many chapters were eager to recruit Old 13. Ogrens were prime cannon fodder. He refused to join immediately, wanting first to test his combat power and talents. Each chapter specialized in different things. Some favored psychic abilities, others firepower or close combat. Choosing a chapter that matched one's talent and temperament mattered. A gun enthusiast in a close-quarters cult would be miserable, and a player who wanted mechanical ascension wouldn't fit in a faction that worshipped flesh. They left the church and entered a broad plaza. Dozens of transport shuttles idled, engines growling, ready to take the players away. Guards in exoskeletons directed the new God-Chosen into the bays. "What a huge God-Chosen!" one Order-keeper exclaimed when he saw Old 13. Ogrens were rare. Old 13 ignored the attention and picked a less crowded shuttle. 15 minutes later, the transport lifted off, bound for the training grounds on the edge of the Hive's cities. The training grounds sprawled over a vast area, reserved for new player training. Instructors were waiting when the shuttle landed. "In the name of the Corpse Emperor, I am Instructor Beulah's. I'll teach you basic firearms and vehicle operation," a middle-aged man in uniform announced, standing ramrod straight. Novice training lasted 2 days, aiming and firing, close combat with monomolecular blades, chainswords and power swords, and operating and maintaining exoskeleton power armor. Beulah's explained everything and had the players practice until they all understood the basics. When the sessions ended, he handed out new recruit medals. "You have completed basic training. Now, in the name of the Corpse Emperor, go and defeat the minions of the Chaos Gods," he said, then turned away to greet the next batch of God-Chosen. "This is up, this is down, this is block, this is swing. Okay, you know the controls now. Go defeat the Chaos Tin Cans," one player grumbled sardonically, drawing laughter from the rest. After the training, everyone leveled up and gained skills. On the return shuttle, the players compared notes. "By the way, what skills and talents did you all get?" "Prudence. Endure pain." Someone clapped Old 13 on the shoulder. "What about you, God-Chosen of Tzeentch?" "I'll say it again. I am not a God-Chosen of Tzeentch. Don't call me that," Old 13 replied firmly. "And my skills are none of your business." "You get the clever head talent, right?" a nearby player whispered. "Come on, tell me. I won't tell anyone." "I didn't get any clever head. I got warp sense." Old 13 instantly regretted saying it. "You're still denying you're a God-Chosen of Tzeentch?" The player's eyes widened. Being able to count to 10 is one thing, but warp sense too. That's a prerequisite for psychic powers. Inside the shuttle, the chattering players fell silent and turned toward Old 13. Their looks were complicated. "Could he be the boss's biological son?" someone whispered. "Getting the hidden Ogren skin is one thing. Now he can also wield psychic powers? Is this what an Emperor of Luck is like? I'm jealous." "An Ogren who understands magic. There's only one like that in the Warhammer universe." Old 13. Fine, he'd lost his temper. Now the label God-Chosen of Tzeentch wouldn't shake off. In the warp, in the ever-shifting crystal labyrinth, Carlos as always wove strands of fate and future, granting boons to those who craved knowledge or power in his own mischievous way. "I offer this world to you through intrigue, eternal lord of fate and wisdom. Grant me eternity," a devotee cried, his voice echoing through Carlos's senses. Carlos peered through the labyrinth and watched the mortal scene, a devout schemer standing on burning ruins, praying to the Lord of Change. The man was a master of intrigue, adept at manipulating hearts and plots. The burning world was his offering. He incited 2 mighty factions to war and watched the planet tear itself apart. This fellow actually staged a grand conspiracy and plunged a planet into chaos. Magnificent, but the tale needs a dramatic twist to make it resonate in the warp, Carlos murmured. At his whisper, the mortal scene shifted. A laser bolt struck from behind and pierced the devotee's chest. Several loyal Imperial soldiers limped out of hiding, approached, and finished him off. The Loyalists had killed the traitor and ended the threat. The Imperium had prevailed. The traitor's name would be recorded by Imperial scholars as an example, ensuring his memory endured, an odd form of eternity. Carlos nodded with satisfaction. The outcome fulfilled the supplicant's blessing and gave the story a neat, meaningful end. In the warp, a new Tzeentch daemon was born, an echo of the conspiracy the devotee had engineered, a reflection of Holy Terra. Fate was delightfully unpredictable. Carlos shifted his attention toward the Calixis sector, curious about the servants of the Corpse Emperor. When he saw the Ogryn with a psychic aura, his expression changed. His eyes widened. This isn't Tzeentch at all. 117. Ahriman is here. How could such an intelligent Ogryn appear among the Corpse Emperor's servants? Carlos's four eyes widened in shock. Even more troubling, the Ogryn possessed psychic power. For a moment, Carlos wondered if Magnus had somehow regressed. After several checks, he had to admit the obvious. This was an Ogryn, not a fated Magnus. It seems Magnus's position is not secure, he muttered to himself. My lord will surely favor this Ogryn. How did this Ogryn mutate? His other head asked. Carlos pondered with both minds. Every Tzeentch greater daemon dreamed of teaching an Ogryn to count to 8. Unfortunately, no one had ever succeeded. Carlos desperately wanted to know what kind of mutation had granted this Ogryn such intelligence. He probed the Ogryn's fate line and found nothing but a void, the same emptiness that surrounded the other Corpse Emperor's servants. I'll need other methods, he decided. He thought of Ahriman next, and found the sorcerer had transformed into Hargren and infiltrated Scintilla. Tracing Ahriman's lifelines further, Carlos saw the Dark Eldar and the Necrons closing in, both swearing vengeance on Ahriman. A plan formed. If he could light the fuse of a multiracial free-for-all in the Calixis sector, the Corpse Emperor's servants would be stretched thin, and he could investigate the intelligent Ogryn more freely. But Dark Eldar and Necrons alone wouldn't plunge the sector into chaos. Carlos searched Fate near the Calixis sector for more pawns. He found a hive fleet lurking on the outskirts and orcs prowling the Coronis expanse. With those Xenos plus local rebels, even a powerful Corpse Emperor servant would be occupied. Carlos rubbed a claw against one of his heads, weaving strands of fate to guide these chosen targets toward the Calixis sector and set the galaxy aflame. A group of players arrived at Scintilla aboard a cargo ship carrying reconstruction materials. Newbie player Hai Gui was among them. The Emperor Nyuma battle group had bought a battleship and needed players with ship experience to operate it. They could have hired NPCs, but NPCs were expensive. Wages had to be paid, higher ranks demanded higher pay, and NPCs were unique and didn't respawn. Any incident involving an NPC invited scrutiny. Players, on the other hand, offered advantages. First, promotion costs could be transferred. Players bore their own expenses. Second, wages could be avoided. Everyone had the same status, and mission profit was shared. Third, players could die and respawn, so dangerous missions were acceptable without fear of audit. The cargo ship docked at the port's loading bay. Hai Gui and the other players disembarked among a crowd of NPCs and stepped onto Scintilla's void port, a station even larger than Atoma's Likert space station. Vessels moved in and out in a majestic procession. The port buzzed with activity. Cargo trains rumbled, servitor mechs toiled, merchants hawked wares, drones and servo skulls flitted about, and Imperial soldiers in exoskeleton armor marched in formation. Is this a 100% Holy Terra virtual? Only aliens could make something like this, Hai Gui muttered. Anyone from the Emperor Nyuma battle group or Dora workshop? Over here, the War Master called. Wearing cloaks of loyalty, the War Master and Hai Gui had waited by the exit and now waved through the crowd. After identities were checked, they were guided to the Exemplar St. Fist, which was docked and undergoing repairs. Holy crap! Hai Gui breathed when he stepped onto the battleship's deck. The ship was enormous, more than a dozen kilometers long and several kilometers high. People beside it looked like ants. Its gun barrels dwarfed the cruiser he had commanded in the Holy Terra world. In the future, I'll build one 100 times larger than this, MC Myth declared, clenching his fists. Sent by Dora Workshop, MC Myth had been assigned to draw up modification plans. The War Master wanted to clear many of the ship's cluttered decorations and rituals to make room for additional guns, a task the Adeptus Mechanicus might not support. Dora Workshop had therefore sent their specialist to inspect the vessel. Hai Gui listened in stunned silence. 100 times larger than this, the thought of a mobile, continent-sized warship made his head swim. "Inside," the War Master said, calling the new players to the bridge. MC Myth and the Dora Workshop team were entertained separately. Hai Gui and the others were led to learn how to operate the exemplar St. Fist. The bridge spanned 6 levels, with more than 10 meters between the lowest hall and the top command platform. Control panels ticked and hummed, screens glowed, and holograms floated in the air. A newbie exclaimed, "It's so over the top, just like the real thing." Hai Gui agreed. Booking the game had been a task assigned from above. He had been reluctant to apply, but his superior had insisted. He had expected a meaningless diversion, but this simulation felt startlingly authentic. The control panel he would be responsible for seemed real enough that, if replicated exactly, the ship might actually function in the Warhammer universe. "All right, brothers," the War Master told them. "You have naval experience from the Holy Terra world, so you'll adapt to void warships faster than others. The instructor beside me will teach you how to operate this battleship. Once you've mastered propulsion and navigation, we'll help you obtain the corresponding military ranks, but those rank costs are on you." After the introduction, the highly paid instructor took over. The first lesson for the newcomers was simply to learn the names of the bridge's various panels and the tactical commands. Scintilla Hive World. After the war, survivors were housed in temporary shelters, waiting as the hive cities were rebuilt. Qin Yun sought out players skilled in design to help plan the reconstruction. Imperial architecture tended to be heavy, rigid, and religious, dark, gothic, solemn, and oppressive. Many buildings were templated, making different worlds look alike and lifeless. Qin Yun wanted to break free of those constraints and liberate people's minds and spirits, starting with the cities themselves. Local designers were too confined by tradition to attempt a full overhaul, but players were unconstrained and overflowing with imagination. Qin Yun gave them simple directives. Designs should be richly sci-fi, embody the indomitable spirit and beauty of life, and remain practical for industry and daily living. The players quickly produced blueprints, and reconstruction began in earnest. Landing cargo ships descended with workers and machinery. Flocks of chanters soared over the scarred land, singing hymns. State church priests on floating altars pronounced purification blessings. Giant pulverizers crushed ruined structures, while colossal mechanical beasts swallowed the debris and with grinding roars converted it back into cement and steel. Buildings sprang up rapidly, grand and spectacular but free of the old oppression. Between districts, green spaces and parks softened the landscape and enlivened the city. Shishi Lang took part in the rebuilding, leading a team to suppress gangs, crack down on crime, and root out heresy. In one operation, they dismantled a gang controlling several districts, killing over 50 gang members. "You will be cursed by the gods," the captured gang leader spat, gnashing his teeth as his family, gang, and territory had been wiped out overnight. "Still daring to curse me?" Shichi Lang said, waving a hand. Soldiers dragged the man forward and gave him a lesson in humility, stopping only when he begged for mercy. Shichi Lang smacked him once across the face. "I still like your untamed look," he said before having the man hauled away. "Another mission completed. Let's see what's next," Shichi Lang murmured as he opened the mission database. Suddenly, a voice sounded in his ear. "How can you waste your extraordinary talent here?" He froze and scanned the crowd. His gaze landed on a man dressed as a merchant, smiling in a way that made Shichi Lang's skin crawl. "Who are you?" he demanded, addressing the man mentally as much as aloud. "Ahriman, your blood brother," the voice replied. Shichi Lang's eyes widened. Ahriman, the famed sorcerer of the Thousand Suns, the second-ranked genius among them. The recognition hit him like a blow. 118, The Wrath of Ahriman. When Shichi Lang first logged into the game, he always liked to shout, "Punch Ahriman, kick Magnus, and become the strongest psyker in the galaxy." Still, beneath the bluster, he knew his limits. Even 10 of him tied together wouldn't stand a chance against Ahriman. So when the name appeared on his map, his first reaction was caution. He called out into the team channel, rallying his teammates for a proper group takedown. Azek Ahriman had been born in the Middle Eastern region of Terra during the Unification Wars, a descendant of the Achaemenid nobility. Fearing the power of the Corpse Emperor, the king of Achaemenid allied with him. Ahriman and his twin brother, Ormazd, joined the Great Crusade and were recruited into the 15th Legion, the Thousand Sons. Ormazd, with his charisma, rose quickly to company captain. But the Thousand Sons suffered genetic instability, and the losses that followed left Ahriman scarred. He vowed to find a way to save the Legion from mutation. He rose to become first company captain and chief librarian of the Corvidae cult. After the siege of Terra, Ahriman and the traitors fled into the Eye of Terror, where he dove deeper into warp lore, studying the red-letter warrior rites and even seeking godhood to free his legion from its curse. Traitor. Shi Lang leveled his staff at the figure ahead. How dare you show your face here? You are blinded by the Corpse Emperor, my brother, the voice came, calm. Join us, and you will see the truth. I don't waste words on heretics. Shi Lang raised his staff and pointed at the merchant in the market square. Seize him. The nearby squad didn't hesitate. They raised their weapons, Gauss rifles and machine cannons, and opened fire. But the merchant only smiled. Space twisted around his outstretched hand and a rift spat out a host of Thousand Sons. Sorcerers and rubric-armed red-letter warriors in red and silver power armor, psychic staves in hand. Open fire, the squad leader barked again. Bullets poured out, but where they should have rained, they hung frozen and then winked out under the sway of a psychic field. Bolts answered from the traitors' guns, a roar of weaponry that punched through armor and shredded flesh. Sorcerers cast from the warp, storms of thunder and lightning, sigils and demonic hounds of black smoke and flowing magma. Men in exosuits were flung, burned, torn apart. It became a massacre. Ordinary soldiers were utterly outmatched. Shi Lang swore and stepped into the fray. He raised his hand and warp shards, iridescent and humming, spun up and surrounded him. He thrust them forward like a hailstorm. Ahriman merely waved, and the shards dissipated into motes of light. By the Corpse Emperor's grace, raging thunder. Shi Lang cried, and a bolt of lightning crackled out, incinerating 2 warp hounds. He surged forward with his staff. He was a psyker, but he'd spent a lot of time in the arena. He could fight up close. He smacked a red-letter warrior's wrist and made him drop his bolt gun, then cracked his elbow into the man's head. Another charged, and Shi Lang smashed his staff into the warrior's helmet. The shell splintered under the staff's force field. Ahriman struck then, a concussive psychic blast that slammed Shi Lang into the pavement. When he pushed himself up, the merchant's guise was gone. Before him stood Ahriman, red power armor set with gold and silver, a staff thrumming with psychic energy. Remain calm, brother, Ahriman said. We are not your enemies. We are your kin. Shi Lang checked his HUD. War Master and the others were rushing toward his position, but would be minutes away. He needed to buy time. There's nothing to discuss, you shameless traitor, he said, voice flat. You betrayed the Corpse Emperor and butchered your brothers. Ahriman's face darkened. Around him, his Thousand Sons stiffened. This was audacity. Would Ahriman tear him apart? But Ahriman didn't. A pure, uncorrupted Thousand Son with strong psychic potential was a prize, a possible key to undoing the Legion's curse. He swallowed his anger and answered calmly. Your purity could save the Thousand Sons. Come with us to meet our Primarch Father. He will be glad. Primarch Father? Shi Lang mocked. You mean that sunburned, one-eyed Ogren of supposedly boundless wisdom? Ahriman's gaze sharpened. He is our Primarch, the source of your bloodline. You should not insult him. I am loyal to the Corpse Emperor, not to some arrogant, one-eyed Ogren. Shi Lang's tone was cool. That idiot makes mistakes and blames everyone else. You're blind to the truth because of the Corpse Emperor, Theseus, a Thousand Sons sorcerer, interjected. We are blood, united. You weren't blind when your homeworld was wiped out and you kept counting Imperial credits, Shi Lang shot back. You couldn't beat Horus, so you fell on the Space Wolves to vent your anger. He went on, sharp and unforgiving, how the Corpse Emperor had originally ordered the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves, to bring Magnus back, and how Horus had twisted it into a slaughter. The burning of Prospero had driven them into Tzeentch's service. Horus had been chosen by the ruinous powers. By the time the truth came out, the sons of Horus were broken. There was no revenge to be had, only bitterness. Ahriman's face hardened. The words struck too close to truth, dredging up a past best left buried. Shichi-Lang kept going. You wiped out your own legion with red-letter warrior rights and still expect me to come along? Are you saying I'm dying too slowly? Believe in the corpse emperor, and you will find salvation, Shichi-Lang told Ctesias. Follow Ahriman and that red-skinned, one-eyed Primarch, and you'll be ruined. Follow the emperor, and you'll only fear mutation. Follow them, and you'll starve and rot. Look at your battered armor. Enough, Ahriman snapped. I did not wish to fight my brother, but you persist in insults. Shichi-Lang scooped up a handful of ash from the ground, the gray remains of those just consumed by the warp, and rose. He clenched his fist and let the ash run through his fingers. Do you know what this is, Ahriman? Ahriman's frown tightened. What is it? These are our brothers. Shichi-Lang opened his hand and let the ash drift away on the breeze. If you press your ear to a red-letter warrior's armor, you can hear them, can't you? Ahriman, you promised to save us. How did we end like this? Ahriman's composure trembled. Rage churned behind his eyes, barely contained. He tried to calm himself and speak in reason. You are blinded by the corpse emperor. Perhaps when you meet our Primarch, you will change your mind. Shichi-Lang watched him, then suddenly grinned. You know what? Maybe I will come with you. After all, I've got gene seed from that one-eyed Primarch in me too. I should meet him. Ahriman froze. You would come willingly? Sure. On one condition, Shichi-Lang said. What condition? Ahriman asked, wary. You step 3 meters to the left first. Confused but cautious, Ahriman complied. Shichi-Lang let him move. He had nowhere to run now, after all. Is that it? Can I go with you now? Ahriman asked, hopeful. Shichi-Lang's laugh cut through. Do you really think I meant it? I was stalling, fool. Ahriman's contained fury broke. He swung his staff to seize Shichi-Lang and drag him away. At that instant, gunfire erupted like thunder from the distance. Bolt guns, melta-guns, plasma pistols blazing. Warmaster and the other players who had received the call had arrived, voices shouting as they charged. For the MVP, charge! Capture Ahriman alive and get first place! Faces bright with excitement, they rushed forward. You were stalling for time? Ahriman said, realization dawning, hatred and fear mingling. Shichi-Lang merely sneered. You only figured it out now? It's too late. Ahriman turned to his sorcerers. Form a mandala. Destroy them. The mandala formation was the Thousand Suns Legion's most used combat array, a weave of sorcery that let its practitioners share strength and talents. A bolt shell detonated before Ahriman. He flung up a reflexive shield, and it swallowed the blast. Ctesias, another of the Thousand Sun sorcerers, chanted a summoning, and the air around them chilled into frost. Contracts and invocations drew hordes of warp entities to the field. The red-letter warrior, whose head Shichi-Lang had blown off, stitched itself back together in an instant. With a heart like stone, unyielding and resilient, it intoned. The Warmaster charged, roaring, firing as he ran. When his bolt gun clicked empty, he pulled a greatsword from his back and swung. Psychic barriers could stop shots, but they could not hold back a crushing blade. Demons could meet steel in melee. An enslaved demon answered the Warmaster's call, a black-smoked weapon clashing against the greatsword in a ringing collision. The membrane between the warp and Holy Terra had not been fully rent. The daemon's projection was weak on Terra and soon lost the upper hand. After a missed parry, the Warmaster seized his moment, lashed out with a fist, and shattered the thing's skull. Its form unraveled into black smoke, and its spirit was hurled back into the warp. There are too many of them, Ctesias said, panic edging his tone. Son of Dorn, son of the lion, and wolf pups scenting the air. Ahriman felt the bloodlines of the attackers and his chest sank. The gunfire was too intense, too persistent. Valkyrie engines droned in the distance. The city's forces were mobilizing. If they did not end this quickly, the endless waves of Imperial infantry would grind them down. Death to the traitors, someone cried. Ju of the Iron Warriors smashed forward with a chain axe. The Thousand Suns were forced to break the mandala and withdraw or be cleaved in place. The axe bit the ground where the circle had stood. The blast cracked the pavement. The strike was so sudden that their precognitive gifts did little good. Deprived of the mandala's protections, several red-letter warriors were torn open by concentrated fire. One burst apart instantly. For the Shadow Moon Wolves, for the Corpse Emperor. Haiguai roared and swung a chainsword at Ahriman. Son of Horus? Ahriman began, flinching to avoid the blow. I am a Shadow Moon Wolf. Haigui snarled and struck again. The chain axe screamed through the air. Ahriman tried to read the threads of fate with the Black Raven School's sight, but for the first time in a long while, the future offered him nothing. Where he had always seen branching possibilities and chosen the best path, now the prescience failed him. He dodged awkwardly. A knee smashed into his faceplate a heartbeat later, and it split, blood running down his face. He looked shaken. He had relied on the Black Raven's sight for so long that close quarters without it left him clumsy. He was a veteran of the Great Crusade, however, and adapted. He brought his staff up to parry Haigui's next blow. A bolt of lightning cracked out of nowhere, blasting Haigui and hurling him away. Ahriman lifted his staff and scanned the field. The picture was bleak. A Tsinchian beast was cleaved and expelled back into the warp. Valkyries and gunships streaked the sky, and the air became a curtain of ordnance that tore through warp projections and flesh alike. Red-letter warriors and demons shattered under the punishing fire. Ctesias and the other Thousand Sons were being beaten down. The Corpse Emperor's forces were simply too many. You must come with us, Ahriman said, fixing Shishilang with a stare. He slammed his staff to the ground and poured out a pulse of psychic power that froze the immediate area. The members of the Emperor Numa battle group were locked in place like statues. Ahriman took a step toward Shishilang, intending to drag him away through the only escape he could open. Gold light exploded from Shishilang's body, and the time stop collapsed. Qin Yun materialized at Shishilang's side, and Shiling arrived as well. Sealing's form was becoming more human. Her silver frame was active nanometal, a synthesis of Necron active metal and Golden Age human nanotech, capable of phenomenal regeneration even from a single atom. She landed and threw several demons aside with a flick of her hand, an invisible force crushing them into shards. Qin Yun's gaze settled on Ahriman. Ahriman, he said. Qin Yun had been at a distant construction site, overseeing reconstruction and discussing the new city's design with some players. When he learned of the incursion, he had used his skills to rush to the scene. Before Ahriman could reply, Qin Yun unleashed his power. Lightning raged across the ground, filling the battlefield with crackling energy. Ahriman's eyes widened. This leveled psychic storm could only be wielded at Magnus's scale. He cramped his mind into a tight defensive shell to survive, but the pressure threw him clear. He slammed into the ruins and rolled. The other Thousand Sons, the red-letter warriors, and their demonic allies suffered the same brutal ejection. Qin Yun's technique was raw but overwhelming. Ahriman, for once, was outmatched. Kill him, Ahriman hissed, pointing. He shoved a staff point at the sky and tore open a warp gate of brilliant, searing light. No, my MVP, don't leave! The War Master screamed. The other players fired and swore, but their shots dissolved on Ahriman's psychic shield. They could only watch as he strode toward the gateway. Ahriman, do you no longer call me brother? Shichi-Lang shouted, his voice carrying. Ahriman paused mid-step, turned, and stared back. I will return, he said, voice flat and cold. Rage showed in the hardness of it. Shichi-Lang had tricked him before. Ahriman suspected it again. If you close the rift, I'll go with you. Shichi-Lang shouted. Ahriman's body strained for a heartbeat. Was Shichi-Lang trying to bait him? He did not fall for it. He did not look back again, and he stepped through the warp gate. Qin Yun's blade flashed. The demon nearest him was cleaved to ash. Others fell to his sword or were smashed and hurled into nothingness. The rift sealed as if it had never been. Where the warp tear had been stood Shichi-Lang, the War Master and the rest, pounding their chests and wailing. Ahriman was gone. Their grief and frustration were raw. If they had captured him, he would have been their MVP, worth more than any petty prize like Lord of Darkflame Balfour Mel. Damn it, we were so close, the War Master ground out. Then we wouldn't have to listen to the Hunter Demon boys gloat. We could have humiliated them. Who'd have thought a chosen like Ahriman would flee? No spine at all. Shouldn't he have fought to the death? Haiguai limped up, nursing his losses. We can't let him get away next time, Shichi-Lang vowed, clenching his fist. He'll come back. Qin Yun watched them in silence. Fortunately, no critical infrastructure had been lost. He thought to himself about how to guard against such traitorous infiltrations in future. Shieling stepped over. She switched from combat to daily mode, and her humanoid module slid into place, presenting as a woman in a neat naval uniform. "Master, Fleet Commander Xia has a communique," she reported. "Put it through," Qin Yun said. A hollow screen flickered into being and showed Commander Xia. "Saint." Xia gave the Aquila salute. "We've detected an Eldar signal, an Ark vessel claiming to be from the Usve Ark world, dispatched by Prophet Eldrad Ulthran to render aid, requesting permission to transit." Qin Yun thought back to the conversation he'd had with Eldrad before leaving Macragge. He'd asked for assistance and expected a slow response. Eldar were not known for speed. He permitted the passage. Allow them through, receive them as guests, warn all departments not to show hostility. "The Eldar's psychic craft is the finest in the galaxy," he added to himself. If chaos or traitors were trying to infiltrate, their counsel might prove crucial. "Understood, Saint," Xia replied, and the link cut. Qin Yun glanced at the players still moaning in the ruins. He could read the split between their outrage and their eyes flicking toward reward. "Issue them rewards," Shieling. "Yes, Master." The nanometal managed the ledger. An alert sang in the air. "Emergency event reward. Ahriman's sudden infiltration of Scintilla has been averted. The guide is pleased. Reward, 15,000 contribution points, 50 honor points, 70 war score." Faces that had moments before been so distraught lit up at the numbers. Qin Yun felt a wry, wordless exasperation at the player's predictability, then tapped another order into Shieling. "Mission issued. Investigate the truth. Ahriman, agent of the Chaos Prince of Pleasure, infiltrated Scintilla with unknown designs. The guide orders the threat neutralized and Ahriman's motives uncovered. Inquisition Kaiden will oversee this matter. Report and accept the mission immediately. Reward, 25,000 contribution points, 1,000 honor points, 1,500 war score." With mission text delivered, the players dispersed, quantity of reward reasserting itself over wounded pride. Qin Yun caught a Valkyrie back to the construction site, finished the necessary briefings with supervisors and designers, then lifted back to low orbit. He planned to meet the prophet of the Usve Ark world and coordinate defenses against chaos infiltration. In the warp, within the crystalline turns of the labyrinth, Carlos watched Ahriman's retreating figure and the tangled strands of fate. He bit at his lips in frustration. Ahriman had been more clever than Carlos had expected, sinuous, slippery. But the outcome had not matched Carlos's expectation of a slow-burn ruin. Instead, the pure Thousand Suns had rushed in, seized the opportunity, and been driven off in disorder. "Ahriman is a genius," Carlos muttered, and then his expression hardened. "If he won't play the long game, I will." He sat amid the shimmering web of destinies and began to weave his own. First, he would use the chaos already spreading through the Calixis sector. He would guide cults and fringe sects, let the menagerie's corruption bleed outward until rot had its root everywhere. Twisted men and women, planted in places of influence, would wait for his signal. When the appointed moment came, they would erupt in a single, coordinated convulsion, annihilating what the servants of the Cursed One had built. From hope to utter despair, from sky to abyss, the saint's lament would be a spectacle. Carlos smiled without humor. He would bend the sector into the god's design and force the Corpse Emperor's followers to collapse and pledge themselves to chaos. He had a perfect plan. 120, a naval genius. When people stared into the void, they often felt small and awed. Dahai would sometimes stand at the bridge porthole and watch the deep, dark expanse stretch away until it lost itself in nothingness. Is it really just a game? He wondered. A deep, authoritative voice dragged him back to Holy Terra. Warships have souls. Learn to speak with the machine spirit, appease it, and let it accept you. Only then can you fight alongside it. Colonel Semper sat on the captain's throne and explained as he commanded the battleship. He had been tasked with teaching them how to operate a void warship so they could be useful in the coming war. Dahai pulled himself together, listened intently, and took notes. Void warfare relied on large tonnage, long-endurance platforms, more like naval combat than aerial duels. The difference was dimensional. Naval tactics stretched from 2 dimensions into 3, and the computational demands were far greater. That was why the Emperor Numa battle group recruited players with maritime experience. They adapted to void warships faster. Semper walked them through naval engagements and the procedures for each system, then had the god chosen run simulated trials. The Thinker system linked to their nervous systems and simulated a realistic void battlefield while Semper scored their performance. Those who passed would, by the Living Saints' orders, receive a new captain medal and have their scores recorded in the god-chosen system, which Shieling directly supervised to prevent fraud. The first trainee hooked up to the Thinker system and entered the projection. The virtual battlefield played out on a screen so everyone could watch. Dahai's eyes widened. This game could run a game within the game. Too cool. Other players were equally stunned. They had assumed Warhammer OL had no more surprises left. They had been naive. Trainees cycled through tests covering every principal role, from weapons and navigation to divination and command. Dahai went last. "Don't be nervous," Colonel Semper told each god chosen. "Your score doesn't define you. You're learning fast. Don't put too much pressure on yourself." Dahai nodded and fitted the virtual helmet. After a brief sting, neural cables clipped to the base of his skull and spine, and his consciousness slipped into VR. The simulation felt as real as Holy Terra. Dahai performed exceptionally. He had come up from the ranks, and he had an instinct for commanding capital ships. That talent explained how he'd become a capital ship commander at his age. As a virtual captain, he was inches from victory. His weakness was familiarity. He didn't know the exact ammunition loads, maneuverability profiles, and other specs of void vessels. One wrong call let the enemy score a hit on the ammo hold, and the ship detonated. Still, his run turned heads. Several players couldn't even get their ships to move, or were destroyed instantly. Dahai had managed to duel, recover, and nearly win. Compared to the rest, his showing was outstanding. He hadn't intended to stand out, but in this world, talent brought resources. His superiors had told him not to hide his abilities, but to show them off and attract attention. "Your performance was very good," Semper said afterward. "After warp navigation training, you could serve as a captain. Give it time. I believe there'll be stories of you in the Calixis sector." Others crowded him afterward, envious and curious. Dahai claimed he'd been a cargo ship pilot and played fleet strategy games in his free time. After they dispersed, he glanced out the porthole and saw a streamlined alien ship slip past. Its silhouette unlike any human design, a huge sail at the rear. "What's that? Why a sail?" he asked the player beside him. "That's an Eldari ship," said the player with the ID Tidu's decision. "That rear sail is a solar sail. It draws energy from stars and the warp to propel the ship." "You're kidding. An Eldari?" Dahai admitted he'd only pre-ordered the game out of curiosity. He wasn't a fan. Tidu envied him. "You're new to Warhammer, but you learned fastest. After warp training, you'll definitely be a captain." Tidu was a few days behind on training. "I'm still half-baked," he said. "It's practice," Dahai said. Tidu brightened. "I still have contribution points. Gotta use them." He then invited Dahai on a mission. "There are lots of missions in Scintilla to clean up gangs and heretical groups. NPCs help. We can tag along and earn points." "Take me," Dahai said, thinking it was time to see the surface after days of ship training. As the Eldari ship docked, uproar erupted. Many had been taught to hate Xenos. Seeing one glide into port offended them. "Xenos trash. Get out of our port," people shouted. "How can these things enter? This betrays the Omnissiah. Blasphemy in the Emperor's domain." Anti-Xenos sentiment swelled, and crowds surged toward the docks, intent on attacking. Armed guards held them back, saying this visit was the Living Saints' will. The Eldari had been invited to discuss the fight against chaos. The Adeptus Arbites moved quickly, arresting a few agitators to prevent riots, but the crowds bristled behind the cordon, watching with hatred. Qin Yun arrived with senior officials to meet the Eldari. The murmurs followed him. How can the Living Saint consort with Xenos? The populace was confused and angry. Had Qin Yun not proven his sanctity with miracles and prestige, he might already have been branded a heretic. Some players who'd never seen the Eldari joined the throng out of curiosity. Qin Yun didn't rush to explain. He waited calmly on the dock. Soon the Eldari hatch opened and envoys walked onto the human platform, producing a hush and then a new round of whispers. The crowd's stares were either hateful or mistrustful. Dahai had meant to go on a mission with Tidu, but seeing the living saint's arrival, they both paused to watch the unfolding scene. The Eldari resembled humans in basic form, 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head, but their figures were more slender and their movements were elegant and restrained. They wore many angular runic gems and spirit bone ornaments that made no sound. Even nobles who had trained since childhood seemed crude beside them. Dahai studied their gear, tall helmets curved forward, with dark green lenses like insect or deep-sea eyes. The lead envoy's helmet had a dull gem embedded in its center, larger than a fist. He carried a slender spirit bone staff, topped with a geometric symbol and an inner gem that shimmered with an uncanny light, almost drawing the eye. At his hip hung a strange long-barreled firearm with a grooved muzzle, and he wore a power sword. Inquisitor Kaiden spat the word Xenos in a tone of disgust. The crowd echoed it until Qin Yun's voice cut through. Silence! They are our guests. Do not insult them. As living saint, Qin Yun's command calmed the crowd. The Eldari envoy made a complex gesture, removed his helmet, and revealed translucent ears and long, glossy black hair. His face was hauntingly beautiful, ambiguous between male and female, a neutral beauty that transcended gender. Aside from his completely black eyes, his features were not far removed from a human's. I am Kasareth of the Usve Ark world, noble emperor saint, he said. Welcome, prophet, Qin Yun replied with a smile, then turned to the officials. The Eldari once helped free the emperor's son. They are now allies against chaos. Treat them with respect. Qin Yun addressed the crowd more earnestly. Cadia has fallen, and both humanity and the Eldari face extinction. We must do what is necessary. The Eldari need human allies to survive, and we need every aid available to save the Emperor's realm and our suffering kin. Gradually, the crowd quieted and dispersed in small groups, muttering that the living saint must know what he was doing, and that if alliances shifted later, they could hate the Xenos again. For now, people accepted the necessity. Inside the strategic meeting hall, high-ranking officials and Eldari envoys sat opposite each other. Qin Yun briefed them on Ahriman's infiltration of Scintilla. Ahriman? Kasareth's expression tightened. The name carried weight even among the Eldari. His apprehension showed how infamous Ahriman had become. They've infiltrated my side as well, Qin Yun said. We ask you to teach humanity the appropriate psychic arts so we can better resist chaos's infiltration. You are the first human ruler to openly ask to learn from the Eldari, Kasareth said, surprised. Staying stuck in old ways is no virtue, Qin Yun replied. Learning from those who lead is how we progress. And what is our benefit, Kasareth asked.